Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel, and you're watching TechStrong TV. Today's Monday, December 14th, and welcome to the show. I'm feeling a little better. For those of you who may have watched some couple of days previously, I don't have that big bandage on my pinky finger here as I continue to recover from my losing battle against the kitchen mandolin on Thanksgiving that had me winding up in the emergency room. But it still hurts. But anyway, small compared to so much suffering and stuff going on in the world as we continue here on the cusp of getting these vaccines rolled out and hopefully trying to turn the tide on the whole COVID situation. But we hope you're safe and well and strong, tech strong, and productive as we continue all striving to be during what has been a very unusual year. Really looking forward to 2021. In the meantime, though, we've got a great show here for you on a Monday. Let me tell you, we've got a couple of great interviews, some nice announcements, news, etc. Let me give you a little bit of preview. First of all, a spin-off, well, it's not a spin-off, but it's almost a company within a company coming out of Commvault. It's called Metallic Cloud Security. And I speak to Manoj Nair. Manoj, longtime security guy, RSA, public cloud stuff, is the GM there. Manoj is going to tell us about what Metallic is doing around public cloud, hybrid cloud, cloud security, why Commvault's done this, and the tremendous success they've had. I think they, starting in the U.S., are now in 14 countries in just a matter of a few months. So good conversation with Manoj. After that, I'm joined by Jay Choi. Jay is the EVP GM over at Qualtrics for their employment or employee experience, XEX unit. They recently did a study with, in conjunction with PwC, on employee experience during COVID, and obviously a lot of people working from home, people perhaps going to continue working from home permanently. What does it mean in terms of the technology and IT that companies are using? So a good conversation there with Jay, and it's a good study. After that, we're going to do, we've got a great CISO talk lined up for today, actually. And this was one of the best CISO talks we've done. Matt Newfield, CISO at Unisys, and Mitch Ashley, my two co-hosts, are joined by Olivia Rose, former CISO over at MailChimp, Heather Riccudo, and if I mispronounce Heather's last name, I apologize. Heather is over with IBM Security and is the driving force behind, I think it's not Girls Who Code, but not Women in Code. I think it is Girls Who Code, but she'll tell you more about it. Also, Larry Whiteside Jr. he's the president of ICMCP, as well as our friend Julian Waits. Julian's just a treasure, man. Julian's actually one of the founders of ICMCP, and he's also general manager cyber over at Devo, and we love having Julian. He's almost a, honorary co-host of the show. So it's a great CISO talk. We tackle head on and with no holds barred some of the issues around diversity in cybersecurity. So good stuff there. Next, we're going to we have something old today. And even our something old is a killer presentation today. It comes from DevOps Experience back in early October. It's one and only Charity Majors. And Charity is going to talk about the societal ethical path to high-performing teams. And if you've never listened to Charity or you don't know about her, you're in for a treat. Don't miss it. She's a special presenter, special person, not just presenter. But check that out. After that, we're going to turn things over to Charlene O'Hanlon, our Chief Content Officer, where Charlene will give us the news, what's happening along the media ops sites this week, or today anyway. Security Boulevard, Container Journal, DevOps.com, etc. So Charlene will be giving us that, as well as a preview. We have another great week of webinars over on our channels this week, so you don't want to miss them. Check that out. And then we have Jonathan Weiss from Software AG. And Charlene and Jonathan are going to talk about IoT and its role in helping battle climate change and technology's impact on climate change in general. And that's a really important subject. You know, sometimes we forget, we get so hung up in our continuous testing and continuous improvement and CI/CD and cybersecurity. We lose the big picture of just how influential, how important technology is in our daily lives and tackling big issues like COVID, like climate change, like these big things that where we need science and technology coming together. So that's Charlene for today. After Charlene, we're going to switch over to the analyst corner with Mitch, and I'll be introducing Mitch, who's going to have some great commentary and video, and then I'll be back to wrap things up. It's a happy Monday here, man. It's almost Christmas. We're going to take a quick break for a commercial, and I'm going to be right back. All right, up next, we have, as I mentioned, the GM of Metallic, which is a Commvault spin-up, and it's Manoj Nair. Manoj has been in, he's been in that cyber a long time. He'll tell you all about it and tell you what's going on at Metallic and why he's really excited about what they're bringing to market. Here's Manoj Nair of Metallic.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here on another episode of TechStrong TV. Our guest for this episode is Manoj Nair. Manoj is with Metallic, part of the Commvault team. He's going to tell us all about that, some recent news coming out of Commvault, and just a general talk. And Manoj, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Thanks, Alan. Really good to be here.
Absolutely. Manoj, you know, you what a long, strange trip it's been for you, right? I like to pride myself on a lot of what I've been through over the last 30 years in tech. It's been a great journey, a great learning experience. But you've had a good journey yourself. Let's before we jump into Metallic and Commvault, let's talk a little bit about your background.
Thanks, Alan. You know, I'm not the best talker about myself, but we'll do a short one here. You know, I started my career as an engineer and spent some time in data management and data classification. At some point along the way, you know, there's a spin out that I had that became part of RSA. So, you know, spent about 7 years or so in a security company, doing all things enterprise, enterprise security, security analytics, and towards the end, managing all their identity products, which happened to be all SaaS, but old school SaaS, which we transformed into more cloud SaaS. So I became a cloud customer, and off the leading public clouds, learned a lot, great experience. What does innovation look like? And that was about 8 years ago, so very early in the cloud journey. Since then, I've worked with cloud companies in terms of partnering with them, building solutions that customers really need to help accelerate their cloud adoption, or make sure that they're not, getting, some of their corner cases, things like shared responsibility model. What does it mean, and what tools are required in addition to the cloud to go about that? Containers, build a startup over the last 4 years or so in the cloud management, cloud governance space, and it was all leveraging containers. So I was a customer of Kubernetes and open source and the ecosystem, and how my team went about building that. Here I am after we took that company to an exit, running and leading Metallic, which is trying to also continue in that cloud journey with a very specific lens around data and data protection.
Absolutely. I'm reminded of my own journey, in the dot-com days, Manoj, 97, 98, 99. I helped the group start a company called Interliant, which was one of the early, what they called ASPs. So that's application service provider. So this is cloud before there's cloud, before it's cloud, SaaS before it's SaaS, right? Because we were hosting things like PeopleSoft and Oracle and Onyx and a bunch of others. Well, Lotus Notes was the biggest thing we hosted, and trying to do that sort of in a multi-tenant capacity. There is no, VMware as we know it today,
Yeah.
hypervisors. Yeah, it was interesting, but I look back on it as, man, it was kind of ahead of its time. Had we done that with the advent of cloud, we might have been successful. Not that, I mean, we went public and did all of that, but at the end of the day, it really wasn't successful. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about Metallic. Our audience is made up of cyber, DevOps, cloud native folks, right? So digital transformation. Some of them, a good chunk of them have heard of Metallic, but let's not assume.
Yeah.
Give us a little background.
Awesome, that's great. So Metallic is set up as a startup. It's Commvault's SaaS venture, and Commvault has been a market leader in data protection, data management, number one. Just in this last MQ, but leader in the Gartner MQ for the last 9 years. And that category has been around obviously for a long time. What Metallic was set up to do is to help customers who are in the process of this whole cloud transformation, digital transformation, and how to do data protection and data management, really deliver all of those capabilities as a service. So whether it is, figuring out how to protect your SaaS data, your endpoint data, your containers and Kubernetes data. And data is, really the crown jewels. It doesn't matter, what mode you're in. Alan, you and I talked about, old school SaaS and, hosting and service providers. And, customers continue in this sustained hybrid mode for a long time. So really, that's what Metallic's focus is. It's SaaS data protection. And we today are offering backup as a service for various workloads, Office 365 and endpoints, but also for enterprise workloads. So whether it's SAP HANA and SQL Server or VMware, Hyper-V, VMware Cloud on AWS, various flavors of Kubernetes, file shares. So all of this is part of what customers need to protect in a holistic way. And they want to simplify how they do that, right? This is, transformation is messy. And how do you really make sure that at least your crown jewels are taken care of? There's peace of mind around that. Well, there's lots of different risks and concerns these days. It's not just, the COVID reality we're all living in, and we're all in, I'm in my garage and people are all remote, and that's, causes its set of challenges. And there are other challenges. Companies are forced to transform much faster now. So that's really the mission for Metallic. How do you really think, and what does data protection mean? In each scenario, it's different. For a SaaS application, it's different. For a containerized application, it's different. But how do you, take care of those differences and not let our customers worry about them? That's really our mission.
Sure. And Manoj, you're GM. We should have said that from the beginning, and I did, and I apologize. You're GM of Metallic, right?
That's correct. So I'm the GM of Metallic, and so Metallic, is really set up to function like a startup, so it can move fast. And we've got, we have the power of Commvault behind us, and so we're able to tap into that extended team. But we have our own, infrastructure team, product engineering, sales, everything. We also have a strategic partnership with Microsoft, who is a big partner of this journey with us, right? So Commvault and Microsoft, two trusted vendors coming together to help customers in this journey, and Metallic is really the vehicle in which we're trying to make that happen.
Excellent. So Manoj, with your background, your history, no one from Commvault's watching this now, so don't worry. But how is it kind of operating as you said, a startup operating as a startup within this, monolithic kind of, I don't know if monolithic's the right word, but within this, kind of established big company, enterprise, right?
No, great question, Alan. It's one of the reasons I came in here, right? I was the CEO of a startup, and as I was thinking of what to do next, the idea of a company that has really been a market leader for 20 years, in the space, being brave enough and bold enough to transform itself. I'm sure read the book. I'm a big fan, Clayton Christensen and Innovator's Dilemma. And Commvault was, ahead of being able to catch this trend and say, hey, you know what? We need a way where customers have a choice. And that choice is really about, how can they get a different model that they might want for delivering the same capabilities in IP, but also customized. What does different mean? What does cloud native data protection really mean? And so, other companies have done it. Some have done it better than others. And, with the progress we have made in such a rapid time, that bold bet that was made, I think 18 months or so ago, when this vision of Metallic was conceived, is really, proving out to be the right way to go and execute really fast in a market that, especially over the last 9 months or so, has been rapidly moving to the cloud.
Fair enough. All right. So there's been a lot of news. I mean, I interviewed someone from Commvault. Time is in COVID just goes crazy. I think it was last week, but maybe it was the week before. But I interviewed some Commvault folks recently. There's been a lot of news out of Commvault in general, as well as specific to Metallic. Why don't we hit on some of those things, Manoj?
Yeah, no. So Metallic, in the last year plus old now, and really rapidly evolved its offerings. Just this past quarter, we have doubled our offerings and tripled the number of countries we're in. So today, at the start of this year, we were US only. Today we're in 14, 15 countries around the world. We are in all Asia Pacific and in Australia and New Zealand. We're in 10 countries in Europe. We're in Israel. We're in US, Canada. So one is as a SaaS service, the geographic expansion is not just making the service available. It is the compliance. It's GDPR. It's regional laws. It's data residency. We are a data processor, so that has got to be done right and done in a way. So. But our customers around the globe were asking for it, and so we accelerated that global availability much faster than I would say a typical startup would do. But also the offerings, right? So we started with focus on O365 and endpoint. It was always, we have access to the Commvault IP, but we're making this a cloud-native SaaS service. So we take it, take that entire experience in SaaS that includes acquisition. How do you procure it? How do you sign up for a free trial? Can I go to a marketplace and just click and access and start backing up my data? And how easy is it? So simplicity of business model and consumption were key to us. Our O365 customer doesn't have to worry about anything. They connect their account. They never have to worry about the storage. They don't have to worry about the network egress charges and where is the infrastructure. That entire suite just gets backed up. So that is something that, was not just a mid-market, but large enterprises immediately, started transforming. Teams adoption. How do you protect your team's data? O365 is not just email. So it started there. Endpoints post-COVID. We made the endpoint backup free because if you imagine, you don't want your endpoints to be backed up now coming through the corporate network. Everyone's remote. So you do want it to go, direct to cloud, and we made it available. And we saw the biggest of big enterprises sign up. And one of the largest insurance companies is a great example that they had 6 months free, unlimited, but even before that was over, they just signed up and said, we need the service. Long term, this is the way to go. And so we're starting to see that enterprise traction, and with the enterprise traction is the enterprise workloads. So the doubling of those is really, very near and dear to my heart. Is this, the different paths to hybrid. And what we opened up is 3 new workloads: the Metallic, for VM and Kubernetes backup, Metallic for database backup, and Metallic for unstructured data and objects backup. And all 3 of them, all of them are backup as a service. Again, in the case of enterprise workloads, you have certain other things you think about, but they're all aimed at this journey to the cloud. And happy to double click on that. But that's been all the recent news. There's been quite a lot, and we can unpack that here in a second.
So, well, what we should do is make it easier for people at home, because I mean, you listen to you and me talk about it, but people want to digest it. Where is there somewhere on the Magic site or Metallic site that we can kind of where this is all in one place kind of thing?
Yeah, you just go to metallic.io, and right on the website there's this on the top screen there's a video there. I would start there, and just just shows kind of these paths and journey to the cloud. But within there's lots of assets, blogs, different paths, right? You can self-select who you are and which path you want to go and what really matters to you. There's also Microsoft.com/Metallic. So if you're more used to the Microsoft ecosystem and you're a Microsoft Azure customer, we're like a native service within Azure, so that you can start there and go down that route too.
Great. Manoj, I mean, the whole idea of launching this and running this in 2020, right, with everything that 2020 has brought us, has it helped, hurt, not really been a factor? What effect does that have?
Alan, I rarely quote Mike Tyson in an interview, especially, but
you will be the first person on our show to quote Mike Tyson.
2020 is like that Mike Tyson statement, right? Everyone has a great plan till they get punched in the face. And every one of us, our employees, our customers, it's been a punch in the face, right? All those great plans, we're going to go do this, that, this is how we're going to grow our business. In our case, it's about how to have a normal trajectory of growth and go from mid-market to enterprise. And in our customers' case, we talked about some of the journeys and digital transformation having to get accelerated, at the same time security. So for Metallic, the fact that we were launched and in market, it was great for our customers. Right now, they pulled us much faster than we would have made some decisions, but that has been great. You want to be customer driven as a startup. You don't want to be exploring certain things and no one cares. So people do care. It comes with a lot of pressure to move fast, and I'm happy to say we moved fast. The team did a great job and did all kinds of things that probably wasn't conceived. If I go back and look at the roadmap for the start of the year, I don't think it said 14 countries, 6 offerings, and almost launching something new every month was in the plans. And that's really what's happened, right? Our customers are accelerating the journey to the cloud. 30% of customers have made that move just within this year of saying, I'm just going to be 100% cloud, or so that's some of the research out there. Almost everyone has a hybrid initiative, except now it's real. You got to be, right? You are now executing on it. And so from a business perspective, it's not something you plan for, but I think the fact that we have been able to help our customers in some of these in a very unique way and actually accelerate what we can do for them, that has been great, and that's been very fulfilling.
Excellent. I told you when we started, the time here goes really quick, man. That I know we have more things on our list. You're going to may have to come back and we'll continue the conversation. But we mentioned a lot of the new announcements, the new capabilities, new countries that Metallic is now operating in. What other? I don't want you to say anything you're not supposed to say, but what other countries might we see Metallic in the near future?
Yeah, no, we continue to expand, both in APJ and EMEA. There's more. It's funny. We thought we added 10 countries in Europe plus Israel just a month or plus ago, and of course, you get demands from countries that you're not in yet. So
It's always like that.
we're good. We're nimble at accommodating one-offs, but it's more than one-offs, right? So it's no, we got to go and make it available. So that's happening both in Asia Pacific and in Europe. So you'll see us do more there. And there's also workload requests we get. I'll tell you the number one thing that customers are really top of the mind is security and ransomware. And that, unfortunately, we're living in a time of unprecedented crisis, and the bad guys decide that this is the best time, to go accelerate.
No, they never miss an opportunity,
right,
to take advantage of a crisis.
Yeah, never let a good crisis go to waste. They read that code. They decided to do this, and so we're there. We have helped lots of customers with their ransomware requirements and making sure they're ready and their recovery. Right, our customers don't show up in the press, and we're happy about that because they don't. They have protection. We have the data. It's not being impacted. We're going to figure out how to recover. But I think that's one of the biggest trends, I would say, that, how does the mindset has shifted? Previously, when I was a cloud customer 8-10 years ago, I remember the amount of investigation and analysis went into why are you running the service in the cloud? What about security? To it is more secure if I did this as an air gap copy in the cloud. Why don't you have a data copy in the cloud that is virtually air gap from your environment, so that if you ever get hit, you at least have something else. So cloud has become like the first stop in that ransomware defense, separating your data protection control plane so that backup as a service is delivered from outside your environment has now become very important. And then detection and defense in depth, and on the security side, we always talked about it. What about your containerized workloads, right? Kubernetes, and while a lot of people are still doing dev tests, we have significant acceleration in terms of enterprise adoption. This is a great opportunity to bake in protection and security. Make it easy to recover your entire environment. No provider takes care of it. In the end, the shared responsibility model means the customer is responsible for it. It doesn't matter if they use a managed Kubernetes service or they are doing their own open source version of it. You have to bake that in, and we made it easy. We made it so easy that we're saying, look, adopt Metallic for protecting your production workloads today. You get Kubernetes backup data protection for the lifetime of the subscription. So we're running that special offer over the next 6 months. Anyone who signs up for Metallic for VMs gets Kubernetes backup for free. It's cloud native. It works with AKS, EKS, OpenShift, Tanzu, all of that. And so that's part of what we're trying to do, is make it easy for the future workloads to do things right, do things that you may not have been able to do in your prior architecture.
Got it. All right. Hey, we're way over time now. Manoush, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Metallic.io, right?
Yes.
Site. Come back. We'll continue the conversation, man. Okay?
Thank you, Alan. Really enjoyed it.
All righty. Hey, this is Alan Schimmel, TechStrong TV. We're going to be right back with our next guest.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Employee experience is becoming more and more important as the the competition to bring the best employees on board intensifies. With COVID, working remote, people dispersing from urban centers, this has never been more important. Qualtrics and PwC recently teamed up on a study looking at employee experience and how technology and IT is playing a role in that. Had a great conversation around it with Jay Choi of Qualtrics. He's the EVP GM of their employee experience unit. I think you're going to enjoy what Jay and I talk about. Here it is.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on another interview for TechStrong TV. Our guest for this interview is Jay Choi. Jay is with Qualtrics, and he is the Executive Vice President GM of a business unit within Qualtrics called Employee Experience Management, XM. Right, Jay?
You got it.
Did I get that right?
Yeah, you got it perfect.
Thank you. Hey, so Jay, first of all, welcome to TechStrong TV. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us. We're thrilled to be here with you.
Very cool. Jay, before we jump into the study that you guys recently did, I wanted to give a little bit of a background for maybe there are people in our audience not familiar with Qualtrics, the whole concept of employee management, XM. And so why don't we start there? Why don't we give them a little background on the company and maybe a little bit about you as well?
Yeah, I would love to do that. Thanks for the opportunity. So Qualtrics, it's actually started about in 2002. And when it started off, the primary focus was being a research tool for academics. Our founder has a really interesting history. He shares a story where instead of kind of working on a hobby car or anything, his father was diagnosed with cancer. And so they said, look, we're going to start a company together. And his father had a background in market research, and that's how the origin of the Qualtrics story. And
Really?
spent many years just honing in and creating this incredible research tool. And then it grew up into what we would describe as a system of action today. And, creating the experience management category. And so our mission today is we do our best to help organizations identify and close experience gaps. And one of our major business lines is called employee experience management, where we try to help organizations every day identify what gaps they have in their employee experience and drive the organization to help close those gaps. So we're really excited about that. The business is super interesting. And I think there's a really, really strong overlap with your audience and what we do, particularly in light of today in the remote work environment. And so I joined Qualtrics. Actually, this week is my 5th year anniversary.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And so it's been such a journey and a privilege to be part of Qualtrics along with this journey, and then really just kind of helping to build the category of experience management and to reach new audiences like CIOs and IT leaders who we traditionally maybe haven't spoken to as much. But the trend that we're seeing right now is that it goes hand in hand. The technology experience and the IT experience is the employee experience, especially in this day and age. So just thrilled to just share some of these findings and have a conversation with you. So thank you, Alan.
Great. So Jay, you guys did this study. I think it was it in partnership with PwC or in conjunction with PwC? Yeah. And recently, you guys released the results and analysis. And really, I guess we should preface it by saying, well, why don't we say what was the study on? Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did it in partnership with PwC. I think both of us were seeing some of the same things in the market, which and it was actually, I think this study was we had started to create it even before the impact of COVID. Like the things that we were noticing was the CIO and the HR leaders were partnering more closely together to help define the employee experience, because like technology, I mean, Zoom right now, it impacts every single facet of how we work. And it was increasingly becoming a theme. And so we said, let's go do this study together and understand what the role of CIO and IT leaders are and what they believe in the overall experience of employees. So we set off on this, and COVID happened in the midst of it, and the results were pretty shocking when you kind of understand like CIOs play an integral role, and that's becoming more and more important. And that's kind of what originated the study, was this understanding of what partnership does CIO and CHROs have together, and then the role that they played in defining what it looked like, the technology experience, and how it impacted the employee experience overall. So we interviewed thousands of CIOs and IT professionals to kind of get their view. So that's how it started.
Excellent. And of course, like so many things this year, it started, COVID came, we had to incorporate that into the scope,
Yeah.
right? And everything else. Let's talk a little bit about results, analysis, insight from the study.
Yeah, 100%. One of the things that, the thing that was absolutely clear on this was we are seeing the IT professionals and CHROs partner significantly more than they have in the past. Before it was kind of like, hey, employee experience, that's a CHRO's job. But now they are coming hand in hand. And so just to kind of rewind the story a little bit, many of the conversations we have with HR leaders, we had like probably, if you rewind 5-7 years ago, 1 out of 10 of them would have a CIO as a partner in crime, kind of like helping to choose the vendor and to define and build it. Right now, we're looking at like 7 out of 10 discussions. It's the CIO and the CHRO hand in hand. And as I mentioned before, the big takeaway, one of the big things we learned is it is completely clear that the IT experience and the technology experience is the employee experience for many organizations, and it's incredibly pronounced now in this COVID age, right? The second finding, and I think this was just pretty surprising, is 65% of all IT executives expected that their employees would be working remotely permanently, like at least a portion of it, like 25%. And that's a pretty staggering number. And you think about all the businesses, ourselves included, where we probably didn't imagine ourselves in a place where we would have a good contingent of our workforce, or we'd be able to work effectively as a remote organization. But when forced to, we find ways. And I think that's a really consistent stat that the CIOs and the IT leaders are finding, is that a big portion they're expecting to work permanently. And that'll have a lot of implications. Yeah.
I've seen other studies with similar kinds of things, and just anecdotally, even here in our little company, Media Ops, we're only about 24, 25 people. But, as I was talking to you off camera about, other than 2 of us, everyone else is remote. We have a whole bunch of office space here that's become kind of a man cave, for my video director, Paula, and I every day. But in speaking to our team, saying, hey, at some point, vaccines, hopefully everything goes, we put this in the rearview mirror. Very few of them think they're going to come back here full time. They may pop in a few days a week, like they'll work here for a day or 2 a week.
Yeah.
Maybe 3, unless they want to get out of their house because, there's someone else there, their spouse or children or what have you.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I do agree with that. I think, though, Jay, also there's a bigger, beyond just the per company that we look at this societally, when we look at it, what does it mean for San Francisco or New York or, again, as an employer, as a CEO here, I'm thinking to myself, they're not coming to an office. They're going to work from home. Why would I pay that cost of living differential, for instance, for someone living in a San Francisco or New York or, high cost of living area versus, look, if someone's living in the exurbs or not even the suburbs, but the exurbs or, a cheaper place to live, I can get the same talent. They're working from home anyway. It makes no difference.
Yeah.
Right. And do that. And so what does that mean? Bigger picture, right? From it, forget the CIO for a second. Let's even talk from the HR
Yeah.
professionals picture, right? They no longer care if you're in the metro area or, what it is. It it opens a much bigger universe of potential, applicants for any job,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And we're seeing that play out again in this like petri dish of COVID. We're seeing it play out, but it's not going to go away. I think when COVID goes, if COVID ever goes away, but it's not going to go away longer term. I think the changes we're seeing here are going to be permanent.
Well, I mean, jumping on top of that, Alan, I think you're spot on. Absolutely right. Like, anecdotally, I have several friends who have done the exact thing that you mentioned, was moving themselves out of high cost of living areas to a place, especially smaller kids at home. They just need more space. Yep. And I got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old home. I know how that feels, to just need the area. And I think the impact on the high cost of living areas will be real, and it's already happening, if my friends are any indication of it. And it actually has a really interesting set of opportunities and challenges for many of the HR leaders and the businesses that we've spoken to. I remember speaking to a chief experience officer recently, and they said, look, it's how we compete for talent is going to change dramatically. Like, being able to offer remote work, it's not like a nice, it's an expectation moving forward, that like it's an option, or a mixed model that you said, where people are going in a couple days a week. That's the new kind of model of, there are days that people will be moving in, and in order to compete for talent and get the right talent, they're going to have to rethink how they manage their workforce. And then the second thing that's been kind of a really exciting opportunity is by opening up how they think about work, it really allows them to think about diversity, equity, and inclusion a little bit differently, right? There's a huge applicant pool that's now available to many organizations if they're not bound by physical office space. And I think if we, done right, I think it can really help organizations address some of those challenges. So everything you're saying is consistent with what I'm hearing from very, very large companies about how they're rethinking attracting talent, and then where are they going to get talent pools from, and then we as employees have many more options, right? And if technology and the role of technology continues to get better and better, it's gonna feel like a real seamless in and out type of work environment that I get really excited about, and I think organizations will, and a lot of pressure will be on IT leaders and CIOs to help balance that.
Make it happen. Yeah. I've spoken to the CEO, Sid Sabrandi of GitLab, for instance.
Yeah.
They're a big DevOps company. They were 100% remote from day one. They never had an office. They have, I think, 1,200 employees and 1,200 offices.
Yeah.
And he told me something that this is before COVID, Jay, right? But it's bared out, which is this whole thing that you and I are talking about becomes sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy too, because as more people move out of these high rent areas, right, out of San Francisco or New York or Boston or whatever, and disperse into exurbs, rural areas, places where they have more room, more bang for the buck.
Yeah.
There's still only so much great talent available, no matter where they live.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these companies compete for that talent, especially in the IT space when we're talking about software developers and cybersecurity and DevOps and so forth. So once those people make that move, Jay, it's really hard to say, no, I'm sorry, I need you to come back.
Yeah.
I need you to come back into the metro area here because I need you in the office. And this was Sid's point. Yes, maybe name the biggest companies in the world, Fortune 50s. They're big enough to have offices everywhere, right? It's not just the biggest top 10 cities. They have offices throughout the world in many, many locations.
Yeah.
Most organizations don't, and they won't.
Yes.
So if you want to hire people, you got to take them where you find them. And you're going to find them increasingly very dispersed.
Yes.
So it feeds, it's almost like a self-fulfilling kind of prophecy in terms of how that's going to play out. I wanted to, though, kind of pivot a little bit if we can, Jay, and talk about, so I think, we're in violent agreement. What does it mean for IT leaders? What does it mean for CIOs? What did the study show they're doing in response to this?
Yeah, one of the findings, which was very encouraging, and I think it underscores why this idea of experience management is so important, is the concept of experience management is we help organizations constantly monitor every single experience, right? An example was one of the senior leaders in our organization. They struggled with a VPN setup for their computer. It could not, was literally out for 2 days because every 30 minutes they got kicked off, right? And that's, in many ways, if that wasn't available or known, it'd be a blind spot, right? It'd be a poor employee experience and a poor productivity experience. And that's why having an always-on system of action of experience management, I think, is even more critical in today's environment. But the stat that was really encouraging to me was 94% of organizations said that they analyze and capture feedback from their employees and constantly make changes. But the big theme, I think, is different. And one of my friends is also at the Git organization is, and I think there's implications here for many of the CIO and IT communities, is there's a difference between an organization that allows remote work and the organization that's designed for remote work.
You're right. Excellent.
And I think that'll be a really key theme moving into the future, which is, hey, we let you do this versus, our operating processes, our technology stack, how we think about creating an environment where people can collaborate. We are designed for that type of environment. I think that'll be a new charter that will become increasingly important for many of the IT community.
Yeah. In reading sort of the summary, if you will, of the study, one of the stat lines that popped out to me was that, CIOs are, quote unquote, listening to employees.
Mm-hmm.
Something like, I don't even remember, 65%, whatever it was. It was a high number.
Yeah.
And some may look at that and say, well, it's about time, but
Yeah.
Realistically speaking, talk to us, Jay. What's important about that? What's the ramifications of it?
Yeah, I think, at least in several of the organizations that we've partnered with, it's changing where it's not just, speeds and feeds and DevOps just getting stuff out there. It's like, have we really tuned and optimized for our employee base? And, I'll just share a few kind of anecdotal struggles is, one of the challenges that many of the IT leaders and people who are in charge of kind of this component of the business, they have a playbook, right? They build these mini focus groups, and then they test kind of the user experience. That's where they're getting their feedback from. But it's not representative of the entire population. That's where it breaks down, especially when you think about international or global footprints. Like the way they work in Russia is distinctly different than how they, operate in the US and the tools and the things that they need. And so one of the product lines that we're excited about for us is we created this thing called Employee XM for IT. And it enables IT leaders to not just have this mini focus group, but to instrument massive parts of the employee and the technology and the IT experience and get statistically relevant understanding of, there's 3 things I can work on to go fix. What I'm finding that will impact the IT technology experience the most is, call center knowledge, or whether it be, one of our primary applications and how we deployed it. They finally have the thing that they get really excited about is oh, I finally have data from the entire universe, not just the 6 people I call every time. And I think that's really incredible. And when you think about the stat, I think it was actually something above 90%. They want to listen. They're just not feeling really confident that they're getting the right signals and they're getting them from the right places. So they're being able to instrument every single piece of the technology experience from Zoom to collaboration tools to the simple things like their Office suite, like they've never had the ability to do that, and now they can and make real changes in real time and change the actions. It's powerful, and I think it will have a real impact on the employees.
I agree. It is. So I have this belief that the laws of physics apply, and time only goes in one direction, right? You can't, even though science fiction's full of stories, you can't make time march back. You can't go back in time.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a very real thing with some of the stuff we're seeing, like that came out of this study, some of the stuff we're living through in terms of changes that COVID is wrought to the way we do business. And really, and as you said, with IT kind of leading the way, IT and technology leading the way in what these changes are and how they're manifesting. Jay, I told you off camera, the time here goes really quick, man. We're coming up on our end, but I wanted to make sure there weren't any other kind of things that we missed or relevant key stuff that we want to bring out to the audience.
Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity. The thing that I would just bring it back to is, it is when COVID hit, a lot of organizations paused their listening study, right? They're like, oh, we don't know how we're going to react. But there were a lot of them that didn't, and they said, look, this is when we actually got to listen more. And it was interesting that a significant majority of organizations that continued to listen found that their scores went up, right? They found that trusting in the leadership of their organization to do the right things for their safety and health, prioritizing and reacting to the business, their scores went up significantly. And what it just kind of put a further cementing in was that experience management and this idea of always listening is more critical now than ever before. And the organizations who are doing it best are the ones that are listening and constantly have a program that's always on listening, try to drive action within the organization. And the IT community is probably leading the way in many ways, right? They're listening the most because they've got if their ability to manage the employee experience stops, like the whole business freezes. And so I'm really, really excited and proud of kind of the IT community and the CIO community. They're embracing experience management and probably leading out that effort. And that's leading to real productivity and happiness gains in a really tough time for employees. And I think that's pretty special.
It is. Not to end things on a bummer, but we should remember that there's a lot of people out there who are in, the non-service or IT or industries who frankly don't have the luxury of having a job and working from home.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people are just home not working.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have to go, do frontline stuff that put themselves kind of at risk, right? And so as much as we talk about all this and as much as it is impacting the world, we shouldn't lose sight of that big picture too, that there's a lot of people who don't even have that luxury.
You're exactly right.
And hopefully things get better for them as well. Anyway, man, Jay, thanks for coming on and joining us here on TechStrong TV. Come back again when we have some more good news stuff to talk about. It was a great discussion.
I would love to. Thank you, Alan, for having us, and just really enjoyed the conversation.
All righty. Jay Choi from Qualtrics here on TechStrong TV. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with our next guest.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
You know, as a member of the cybersecurity community for 20 plus years, we certainly had a long way to go around diversity. I was there when we were fighting against the booth babes at RSA and Black Hat and so forth. I was there when women were talking about being sexually harassed at cyber conferences, security conferences. I don't even think we called it cyber then. I was there when you looked around the room and you didn't really see many people of color, maybe Southeast Asians, right? But African American, Latino, you didn't see a big representation. We've made progress, but we still have so far to go. And to think that we don't ignores the issue. We had a great CISO talk. I'm joined by my co-host, Matt Newfield, CISO of Unisys, Mitch Ashley, CEO, Accelerated Strategies Group. But we're three white guys. And quite frankly, who were we to say? But we had some people who do have a say. Olivia Rose, former CISO at MailChimp. Heather Rasuto from IBM, who is behind Girls Coding program at IBM. She'll tell you, I think I have the name wrong, but she'll tell you about it. We're also joined by Larry Whiteside Jr., who's a real voice for diversity in the community, and he's the president of ICMCP, and our honorary host at CISO Talk, my friend Julian Waits. Julian, what an interesting repertoire Julian has. Jazz musician, reverend. Listen to it, take it to heart. I think you got a lot. You're going to find it really enlightening. So here's now my CISO talk on diversity and security. Hey everyone, this is Alan Schimmel, and welcome to another episode of CISO Talk. For those of you who are not familiar, CISO Talk's a bi-weekly video show where we spend, 40, 45 minutes diving into a specific area of security that we find interesting. We have some regulars on the show, and then we have sort of a rotating panel of stars. Let me introduce you to our regulars first, and then we're going to introduce you to our stars. Can't get any more regular than this guy. He's my co-host. He's the CISO for Unisys, Matt Newfield. Hey, Matt, welcome.
Thank you so much, Alan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yep. Joining Matt and I is our usual sidekick, well, more than sidekick, but another co-host, Mitchell Ashley, who is CEO, founder of Accelerated Strategies Group. Mitchell, welcome.
Thank you much. Excited about our panel today.
I am too. Joining us, and he's also become sort of a card-carrying regular at this point, is our friend Julian Waits. Julian is general manager of cyber at Devo. And Julian, you know what? Give him a little bit of your background.
Sure. As you said, I'm general manager for cyber and public sector at Devo. I'm also the chairman of ICMCP, the International Consortium of Minority Cybersecurity Professionals, based on the topic that we're talking today about diversity in cyber. And I'm a budding, jazz musician who wishes I could play my saxophone better.
Well, for those of you who've looked at past episodes, Julian always has a saxophone in the back, but he's not in his usual.
Episode to play it for us.
Yeah, that'll be another episode. Yes, Mitchell will play guitar. Julian will play sax, and Matt, you and I will listen. Let me introduce you to our stars of today's panel, though. First, we're going to introduce Olivia Rose. Olivia, a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm really glad to be here, and I love speaking about this topic. A little bit of background about me. I've been in this field for a long time, for about 18 years, and I love security, and I don't think I could ever do anything else. I'm most recently the CISO over at MailChimp, a global marketing platform.
I think most of us are familiar with MailChimp, and that's a big responsibility at MailChimp. Next, we're going to go to our friend Larry Whiteside. Larry, if you wouldn't mind a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So Larry Whiteside, I've been in this industry for longer than I care to count, because then that will tell my age versus the lines in my face. And so I am the CTO of an organization called CyberClan, but most importantly, I am the co-founder and president of ICMCP, the organization that Julian mentioned. So That's why I love talking about diversity. It is literally, besides cyber and my family, it is literally the number one passion for me on a daily basis.
I think you're going to love this panel then. And then last but not least, we have Heather Risudio. And Heather, if I mispronounce your last name, I apologize. I'm going to give you a chance to correct it and talk a little bit about yourself.
Sure. It's Heather Ricciuto, and I am a long-term IBMer. In fact, I'm what we call a lifer. And what I do at IBM these days is lead academic outreach for IBM Security, which essentially means that I evangelize the need for cybersecurity skills around the world. And I also am heavily involved in women's diversity initiatives at IBM, specifically in the area, or most particularly in the area of cybersecurity. So, for example, we're a proud sponsor of ICMCP. That's just one of the many things that we get involved with.
Great. You know, I can't think of a better panel. Our associate producer Jody actually helped put this together with Heather Rock, and what a great panel to discuss. As many of you have mentioned, today's topic is diversity in the security space. We were talking a little bit off camera, and I don't want to sound a mission accomplished. I don't want a mission accomplished moment here, but we have made progress. We have made progress in this industry in diversity from where we were, let's say, in 2003 or 2004, where I think, frankly, if a woman showed up at a cyber conference, she had to really kind of mind her P's and Q's, and it wasn't pretty in a lot of ways, and it was somewhat demeaning. And quite frankly, people of color, it was, you just didn't see people of color other than maybe Southeast Asians, right? And that's changed. And I think a lot of it's changed because some of the people on our panel, but there's still a long way to go. There's still a very, very long way to go. And that's just cybersecurity, right? I think when we look at the broader IT spectrum, there's a lot of work that needs to be done there as well. Now, there's a lot of reasons for this, right? Larry, I know you have strong feelings on what some of those are.
I do.
So take it away, man, and we'll go from there.
So something we have to think about. So a lot of the dialogue that we have around the lack of diversity in the field of cybersecurity, people are like, we've got to do more to get people into the field. We've got to offer more opportunity. We've got to try and hire more diversity. But a large part of the reality is we've got to educate better about the field of cybersecurity, right? So, and when I say that, it's not about making cybersecurity a bigger curriculum. It's about going into middle schools, going into high schools in underserved and underprivileged areas to let them know that this is a career field that exists that they can go into and be successful. It's a career field that exists out there for them to explore. A large part of the reason that we don't have the diversity that we hope for, especially when it comes to minorities, is because there's a lack of understanding or knowing that this field even exists, right? If we look today from where we were 10 years ago, right? So I started this dialogue a little early. If you think back 10 years from that, 10 years ago, and think about high school graduates that were graduating high school at 18. How many people, because a lot of times you go into career fields that you see and know about or have experience about through your network. So if you think about underserved communities, 10 years ago, how many of them had a network of people, right? Because social media didn't exist, right? So how many of them had a network of people that they could see and mimic that in cybersecurity? There was very few. So they didn't know coming out of high school. So now those people are hitting their late 20s to early 30s. And we're wondering, well, why are they not in cybersecurity? They knew about IT, right? So there are some of them that went into IT and then later, after going into IT, started transitioning to cyber. But at that age of 18, they just didn't know about it. And so we've got to do a better job back there, right? Do we also have to do a better job here, right? Meaning here today, do a better job recruiting more diversely? Do we have to do a better job of looking outside the walls or looking outside our normal processes of recruiting? Yes. Do we have to do a better job building better job descriptions that are going to be more open, right? A lot of people don't think if you put college degree is required on a job application, on a job description for a role, you have automatically excluded a large percentage of diverse candidates, because the likelihood that people coming from underserved communities is going to college is here compared to their white counterparts, right? So you've automatically excluded a number of people. If you put, right, 1 to 3 years experience required for this entry-level role, you just excluded a large percentage of diverse candidates, because the likelihood of a woman or a minority getting an internship to get that year of experience that you need based on that job description is here compared to their counterparts that's here, right? And so we've got to start holistically thinking better about these different aspects of how we build and write job descriptions, of what we do to educate youth at a younger age, that not necessarily about the technical details of the field, but that the field exists, and allow them to start creating the mental muscles that they need, right, of analytical thinking to be successful as they move forward and get older and start having to get into the specific technical skills that are needed for this field. It's those things that we have to start putting some focus on and building in order to make the long-term change happen better. But today, the right now is more about recruiting differently, right? It's more about writing job descriptions differently and doing things so that we are thinking outside the box of how we get better, diverse talent in.
You know, I think, Larry, you bring up really amazing points. And it's from my personal experience, I've hired a lot of people, and I always focus on hiring minorities. And I've been very successful in that standpoint, because I think it's important to do everything that you mentioned, but it's also important to focus on anybody can learn anything. When I started in 2002 in this field, I was marketing for ISS. And I very quickly learned how to be a consultant, and I moved into security consulting. You can learn anything, and you can teach anybody anything. So I always look for people who are what I call bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. They're excited. They're thrilled about it. They didn't even go to college. I don't care. I don't care if you went to college or not. I graduated, but that's because I was lucky. I was fortunate to go. But do I think that puts me ahead of anybody else? No, it doesn't. So I always look for certain traits in people where I can teach them, and take 3 to 6 months, and they turn into rock stars. And I think a huge problem we have that I think we don't talk about at all out there is, once you have minorities and you have women and in these roles at companies, how do we nurture them so they feel part of the company and the culture, and they feel respected, and they don't leave? And I have seen and experienced myself more times than I can count. It's not antagonism, it's this underlying current of, did they get the role because of XYZ? Or did she get promoted because of XYZ? And it's just simple. It should be just something simple as, she's in a role of a CISO. I've worked my tail off to be in that role of a CISO. But I always find, speaking from a woman's perspective, every woman I know in this industry constantly has to address and overcome these preconceived notions about how they got that role. And it's just like,
and how they're perceived, right? I mean, I was talking to one of my directs today, and she was being very direct with a group of people, and she and I were talking about it, and I even said to her, do you think you would have gotten the same? I would have gotten the same response if I had said the exact same thing that you did. And the answer is no. No, it would have probably been, Matt really knows what he wants, and he's really direct. And for her, it's like, why are you being so aggressive? And it's,
but Matt, not to cut you off.
Nope.
I think Larry touched on it. Olivia hit it right up front. A lot of it is not people trying to be malicious. It's really unconscious bias. It's the way we were all raised, right? So I'll give a perfect story. I was a CEO of a company called TechStrong. At the time, we had like 500 employees, in downtown Clearwater. And right after I took the job, one of the guys who was a very close friend of mine who worked in the company, we were out having beers down the street one night. And he says, you know, Julian, you talk black and female, but you hire white. And this is a white guy from North Carolina with a very heavy drawl. If you talk to him, you would swear he carries a Confederate flag around everywhere. But one of my closest friends. And the point he was making to me is look at our hiring practices. Yeah, and this is right when we were starting, actually, Larry, when we were starting ICMCP. He was like, you are the CEO of a company of 500 employees, and we still go to all the Ivy League schools to do our recruiting. We do all these things, but where are you really reaching down? And of course, I was upset at first because I'm a black guy and I just got accused of basically being a racist with hiring people. I don't know what they call it, reverse racism. I don't know what it is, but it hit hard. And the next day I got with him and we met for 2 hours. And then I went back to the company the following, because that was a Friday. That following Monday, I met with my human resources folks. And I said, I don't want to change what we're doing for recruiting other than we need to become about how we recruit. I don't want to stop going to the best schools, but here's some schools and some other things that we need to add to the mix of things as we're looking at people. We started looking at how could we anomalize resumes more to the point where we didn't take away somebody's skill sets, but we didn't allow someone's name or school that they went to also put them in a barrel of they're less than someone else. With ICMCP, when we started, as Larry knows, it was very important to us to have white people on our board, specifically for this issue. One of the things I tell people all the time when I speak is I said, look, before we start this discussion, I don't want anybody in the room feeling bad because they're a white guy. You were born that way, and that's fine. What I want you to feel bad about is if you weren't aware of these issues, and I want you to do something about it when we leave the room.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
I think you hit it right on the head, Larry, and that is, it's not an HR problem. It's not a people aren't applying to our job posting problem. It's a leadership problem. I believe that leaders don't know how to hire for diversity other than to ask HR to go find me more diverse candidates and to look at the pool of candidates we have to say, is there some diversity in it?
You're right about that.
It is not a HR problem. It is a leadership problem.
Well,
and
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I'm going to let you finish your point, but I'm going to disagree with you, and I'll tell you why.
Okay, good. I definitely want to hear your perspective on it too. And I don't mean that HR isn't part of the problem, but when we talk about diversity training, although at least what I've received is not really helping managers understanding how to, what you were talking about, Larry, about what are the ways to write a job description? How many people we discriminate against when we put a certain college degree? We always overstate educational credentials, I think.
Credentials, background,
it's ridiculous.
It's a unicorn problem. We want this person. Well, they don't exist no matter what diversity or not.
And I'm not going to pay them. No, we need the unicorn that's free.
Yeah, that's free. Right. It's cheap. So I get my point is I love what Julian, you said about going out and being part of the outreach, being part of the let's go find and help those people find us. Whatever communities we can reach out into. And I say that I'm sure there's a million ways I could have done this better myself as a hiring manager, but it is a leadership problem. That's my point.
Yeah, so Larry, I'm going to disagree with. So I'll put 2 points. So yes, it's a leadership problem, but HR is also a part of the problem. And when I say HR is a part of the problem, right? Because you did say it. You said it's not an HR problem, but you said HR is a part of it. So it's a leadership problem from the standpoint. I agree, because leaders aren't taking an active role in driving HR, right? Mm-hmm. Because what they do is they say, "Hey, I need a role." HR. I want somebody diverse, and then they expect HR to just do it. They expect that HR knows how, has the processes, right? They are the talent management people. They are, right, the human resource people. They are the one that is going to help understand, right, this whole people problem thing, because that's what they do. So yes, there's a leadership problem because the leaders don't lean forward and get actively involved in making the change and forcing HR down the path that they need them to go. But HR is also a problem because HR has not chosen to get out of their own way and operate differently. right? So I took on the role of the president of ICMCP at the beginning of February, January 31st to be exact, right? And so at that board meeting, when I raised my hand to do it, I knew that there was going to be a lot of conversations that I needed to have. So one of those conversations I started having was with hiring companies. And as I began asking them about what are they doing to hire diversely, all of them have said, well, we're doing what we've always done. We go out there and we post our resumes. We post the jobs out there and we pull resumes from, Dice and Indeed and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, so what is your expectation? If you're doing things the same, how are you expecting different results? Well, we sort of think that by doing that because we want that HR is going to then weed out and find the diverse candidates that are in there and present them to us. That's what the hiring managers honestly think. And that's what's not happening because there are a couple of things that get in the way. So let's be clear. Cybersecurity gets paid well. And on the scale of technology jobs, IT's here, cyber's about here. And so because of that, when HR is looking at salary bands, because most Fortune 2000 companies have some sort of salary band that they grade everybody at, when they say, oh, this job is going to make $100,000 a year, oh, here are the requirements that must go with that job. So if we as leaders aren't going in to talk with HR and say, hey, HR, we're unicorns, and I say that jokingly, but I believe it, right? In cybersecurity, that we are unicorns. We're unicorns, so you can't grade us the same as you grade everybody else. That 100K band, you can't put the same requirements on that as you, because I can have a senior SOC analyst or mid-level SOC analyst who makes 100K. But you're not going to have an IT analyst who's going to be making that same amount of money, even though if they're tiered as right at the same. And so it's got to be this balance. But leaders, to your point, have to lean forward. They have to recognize when we go in to be a CISO, when you go in to be a leader in an organization, you have to take some ownership in certain things. And one of those is how you staff and helping to drive and educate HR of how to build better requirements to meet your needs as it relates to getting diverse candidates in.
You have to also educate, Larry. I mean, let's be honest, we have to self-educate. We have to, going to your diversity meetings, and those are all very important, but we have to self-educate. We have to talk. I think the biggest thing I get from this, and Heather, I really want to go to you in a second because of some of the stuff you and I have done in the past, and I've watched you do, but the conversation's not happening. And I think a lot of people in this industry, a lot of people in general become very defensive. They'll ask a question like, well, I don't do that. Well, nobody's accusing you of doing anything, but one of the things that I didn't know, because how would I ever know this until just a few years ago, a colleague of mine said one of the differences between men and women is a man may look at a job and go, I could do that even without experience. Where she was telling me that a lot of times a woman may look at that same job with the same qualifications and go, well, I don't meet every one of those things, therefore I'm not even going to apply. And that at the time was mind-blowing to me, but I could have been very defensive and said, well, that's just crazy talk. I have a lot of women who work for me, instead of us sitting down going, we're going to rewrite these descriptions so that problem goes away. Tell me when the problem goes away. Heather, you've experienced this. I know you do a lot with Cyber for Girls. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, first of all, I want to say, I agree with so many of the points that have been made. And I think that an underlying point here is that there isn't a single answer to, or a single action that can be taken to build a more diverse and inclusive workforce. It takes all different types of initiatives, many of which have been mentioned tonight. But Matt, to your point, I agree with you 100% on the point of women not applying to jobs because they feel that they have to have 90 or 100% of the requirements that are listed in the job posting. And so going back to the point of educating people about cybersecurity isn't, that's not the only requirement. There's a requirement to educate underrepresented populations on how to get into cybersecurity. And one of those things is exactly that We need to make women aware that, guess what? You don't actually have to have 100% of the requirements under your belt before you apply for a job. And experienced folks like us in the industry, I believe we have an obligation to help them understand that they do have the skills. I'll just use the example of veterans. Veterans often struggle with how to translate, they want to transition into a field like cybersecurity as they move out of the military. But guess what? We in the industry, we see how they have relatable skills that are, perfect for working in cybersecurity, not the least of which is ethics, right? And I guess that's not a skill, that's more of a characteristic, but they often need help from folks in the industry to work through how to translate the skills they've developed in their military service to applying those to required skills in cybersecurity. And that's just one small example. And then, that we've talked a lot about about speaking up. And that I just want to say that I think when we witness behavior that is not conducive to building a diverse and inclusive workforce, that we all have to be upstanders, not bystanders. So,
Agreed.
So for example, when I see, when I attend a conference, or even, I'm at the point in my life where I kind of say what's on my mind, because I figure I have nothing to lose at this point. And, when I see a panel that's full of white men, I am not afraid to speak up and say, where are the women? And likewise, Larry, you might stand up and say, wait a minute, why aren't there any Black men on this panel, or any Black women, or, any women of color, et cetera, et cetera. We've got to stand up and say, why does everybody look the same? Because that's not what the world isn't made up of people who look the same.
Couldn't agree more. And I got to be honest, we also, as a white male, have to stand up and say, this is ridiculous. We have to change the scope. And since you brought it up, I love Larry and Julie and the organization you are have founded and run to help the minority community. For veterans, there is Hiring for Heroes, for example. There are organizations out there to help, but we in these leadership roles really need to help people get into the proper mindset. One of the things I loved, Olivia, about you talked about marketing, that's where you came from. I'm a trained psychologist. That's what I would plan to be when I grew up, until I realized I don't like listening to people. And Larry and I used to years ago that's probably not the career for me. But I think that's the other point is, I think a lot of people in that education feel like, if I did not study cyber, which did not exist when we were in school, high school, middle school, or university, if I wasn't a technologist, I cannot be successful. And you all have said it, but what we need to get out there is, I care about two things about an individual in an interview: your passion and that piece of your anatomy that sits between the back of your skull and your eyeballs. That's it. If you show me passion, you ask good questions, you show me that you have done a little bit of research about the topic, about me maybe, about my organization, about the job description, you ask good questions. I don't want experts, right? Experts you still have to train, and sometimes they're harder to train because you're undoing this.
Yes.
So
preach.
Because of the timing here, and Alan, real quick, and I know we could talk about this all day. I love this passion. So I guess the questions, we all understand this is a problem. We all understand it's gotten better, but let's be honest, 20% minority right now in cybersecurity, depending on what analysis, 11% female in the industry. To me, we have a long way to go. And we have a long way to go to change perception, to get rid of the stupid stereotypes. You have to be a math wizard to be in cybersecurity. We're all cyber. When's the last time you had to do algebraic equations? I'm the master of PowerPoint, Excel. I mean, let's be honest, right? In speaking. So what do we do?
Well,
so go ahead.
No, sorry. Were you addressing that to Larry?
No, it's just everybody.
It's to anybody. So for me, I'm going to use a couple of things, right? So you brought up the point of leaning forward, right? So our white male counterparts who make up a large part of this industry leaning forward, right? So I use this analogy a lot because I think it begins to resonate with people. If you think about the March on Selma, if you think about the Black Lives Matter marches that happened earlier this year, right? It took a rainbow coalition of people, not just the people impacted by the event, but the rainbow coalition of people to stand up together and all say, this is a problem.
Yeah.
That's what it takes now. It takes not just minorities and women standing up saying this is a problem. It takes the collective of all of us together standing up and saying this is a problem. That's number one. Because once we do that, once you see more people, right, that aren't being impacted by the problem, also leaning forward because they recognize it's a problem, then holistic change begins to happen, right? So that's the first step. A second, and there are a million steps that can go behind that, but for me, I think that is the first step that has to happen in order for this to really take effect. Because if it's just minorities and women, right, standing up, saying that this is a problem, it will sit and fester, and it'll fester because you'll still have the unconscious bias, and you'll have people saying, they're just complaining. Look at the numbers. I see them everywhere I go, right? So look.
As an example of that, just real quick, I'm sorry to interject here, but it's interesting. That came to light. It proved itself a few weeks ago. I posted something, what was innocuous, just basically saying on LinkedIn, if somebody has a job, please, stop questioning whether they deserve that job. Give them a fair chance. Treat everybody equally. Talking about women and minorities. And I received so many emails on LinkedIn from people I didn't even know, women especially, black women, saying thank you, because they were so upset that a few months before, all these companies were saying, we're going to change things, Black Lives Matter, and we're going to put all our efforts and all our money into this, millions of dollars, and we're going to change things. And they were frustrated because nothing happened. And they needed people to stand up for them and say things like that on LinkedIn. So even little things like that, that you can do every day, which takes no time at all, means a lot to a lot of people, a lot more than companies just saying they're going to do something.
I'm going to jump in there.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alan.
Heather, you go first.
Heather.
No, you go, Heather.
Okay, all right.
Heather.
Listen, what I was going to say is that I think that I'm personally tired of talking about the problems. And I think we need to just focus on the solutions. And we all, folks like us who are so passionate about this topic just need to get out there and keep doing the work that we do and get in front of people and help, bring other role models along with us. So for example, one of the things that we've been doing a lot of when we work with our Cyber Day for Girls program is we call on our early professionals to come talk to the girls, right? So in other words, we use a near to peer kind of format because the girls can relate to them. We were talking a little earlier about how, societal role models that we all saw in front of us as kids were doctors, lawyers, dentists, police officers. Well, it's the same today. The kids today have the same societal role models. There's nobody walking around with a cape saying, I'm a cybersecurity professional, or, I fight cybercrime. But wouldn't it be great if there were? Because then all of a sudden, those role models would be in front of the kids. We have to help get them in front of kids in order to build awareness. And by the way, frankly, it's not just kids. We have to build awareness amongst people of all ages, because a big part of the problem is the adults in the kids' lives who don't know enough about cybersecurity in order to talk about cybersecurity intelligently enough to help kids understand the plethora of opportunities that there are in this industry. And that, as you said, Matt, guess what? You don't have to be a math whiz. You don't even have to have a computer science degree necessarily. Some of us do. I'm not one of them.
I love that. So one of the things that I've done is I've actually gone into churches to do cyber safety right? And so I get a bunch of parents who come in for cyber safety because they have kids, right, who are online and on their phones and everything. And I spend about 15 minutes giving them a cyber safety course, right, and just helping them understand things that they can do as a parent. But then I flip it to educate them about, hey, right, did you know about this career field of cybersecurity? Right? Have you ever spoken to your kids about it? Did you know that this is something? And I go into that. And you would be amazed at how in these underserved communities, how few parents know about the field of cybersecurity, because they are, in most cases, blue collar professionals, right?
Yeah,
they are blue collar professionals working in areas where they don't come across that type of thing, so they don't know.
Only know it from movies.
Well,
right.
The other thing is
the dude in the hoodie.
But the other piece of that, can you guys hear me?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The other thing that Larry, though, is I go back to the point you made earlier, and Heather was making it as well, is it's all about awareness, right? It's not just awareness on the part of the group of people that we're after, but it's also awareness on the part of the people who can do something about it. It's both sides of the equation you have to think of. Even in today's environment, now that, some universities are starting to offer cyber programs and stuff, most people still don't start their IT career thinking they're going to end up in cybersecurity. It sounds like none of us on this conference call started that way. I was a jazz performance major in college and a religion minor. And I went in IT, and then because I'm old enough, I was one of the first people to go from the information security to cybersecurity switch, right? I was there in the early 2000s where, back in mainframe days, we didn't worry about security too much. It was all enclosed in one thing. But the more we wanted to get data as to many places as possible to do business faster and to react faster, and the internet was never designed to be secure in the first place, it just got more and more porous, and then the problem began, and I happened to be there at the beginning. But I go back to something my father said to me, and of course he didn't create it. It's hard to be it if you can't see it. And so one of the things that's most important to us with ICMCP is to make sure as kind of fathers in doing this, I'll use that term, Larry, the way we started, it was actually Devin Bryan who had the idea. He's now the CISO at MUFG. Devin called me one day and he says, hey, I want to meet with you, and I'll meet with you in Tampa where you live. He says, but we got to do something about the makeup in the meetings that we're in. In my case, I'm an entrepreneur who went into cyber. Well, I'm a cyber guy who became an entrepreneur. There were very few Black CEOs in cybersecurity. I mean, at the time, people that you knew, there was maybe 3, I think. And so when Devin came to me, he says, look, I'm experiencing the same thing in corporate America, and we need to do something for women too. But Julian, we got to change to make up these rooms. And I need access to your Rolodex to get started. And she'd be nice if you'd write a check to help too. And so, I had to put my money where my mouth was, because I kept talking about it. And then I had to get the passion in action. But the key thing that I tell a lot of these young people and women when I meet them is it's not just about getting mentors who look like me. When I started my career in New Orleans in IT, all of my mentors were white because there was nobody Black in our department. There were very few women. And so it was white guys who said, gee, I think this kid's pretty smart. I think he can add more value. Let me not just help him with his technical skills, but also his soft skills so he can learn what it means to work in corporate America. And I think as that is my history, I think that's what helps a lot of people is just reaching down or reaching over, I shouldn't say down, to help other people become aware of what it is. Because once they see it and they know it, it opens up a door for tons of possibilities.
I think we should continue this, and I will throw one thing in there, and I'll hand it back to you, Alan. One of the things that
ready to stop yet, Matt? We got more time.
One sec. One of the things that we should also do for ourselves, mentoring people that don't look like us is a good thing.
Absolutely.
But getting a mentor for ourselves that does not look like us is game changing. I promise everybody watching this, my mentors do not look like me. And what I have learned has helped me tremendously in my career, in my personal life, my friendships. It's been eye-opening.
I agree 1,000%.
So there you go. Alan, I'll hand it to you.
So let me, Larry, we started off with you getting real. I want to kind of finish it off with me getting real. So if you can't tell, I'm a white male. Hello, my name's Alan. But here's the thing. You know, and Julian, I'm closer to your age than any. Well, Mitchell's my age too. Heather, you're not as old as you think you are. You know, but I was there also, Julian, in the early 2000s and the 1990s as well. And I have a background as well on this. But it's very hard as a white male. It's one thing to be sensitive. It's a thing, something to be sensitive to the glass ceiling and to women. It's a thing to be sensitive for people of color, right? When you live in a white-dominated world and you're the one or two person in the room. It's one thing to be sensitive. It's another thing to walk a mile in their shoes. And I think that when we talk about leadership and we talk about, why it takes leadership, there's a lot of people who's and I'm sorry on the Zoom video, this might be going slower, but there's a lot of people whose lips flap and they have the best of intentions, but they haven't walked a mile in those shoes.
Exactly.
And until you walk a mile in those shoes, it's really hard to understand. When you're black or a woman and you walk into a job interview, there's no hiding it. You know what I'm saying? I'm Jewish, right? People look at my face, they know I'm Jewish, but well, you are too, Olivia, but you know what I mean? But I could pass, right? A black man can't pass, a woman can't pass. So as sensitive as we want to be, until that day is over, where when you walk into an interview, Olivia or Heather, and the man interviewing you doesn't look first at how you're dressed and how short your skirt is and what your legs look like and your hair or whatever, or you walk into a room, Larry, and they say, oh my God, this is a big black guy, I'm intimidated or whatever, right? Until that day's over, this is going to be an issue that we keep talking about and talking about and talking about. And if we don't recognize that as truth, you're all kidding yourselves.
Exactly.
You're all kidding yourselves. That's what we got to hit on.
Alan, one of the things to think about also, we also need to scream louder that when we are part of diverse teams, when we work in environments that facilitate this, where everybody's passionate, nobody's self-serving, nobody's worried about, well, you're telling me, and Julian, I love the way you said it, you're telling me I should feel bad because of the way I was born, which is never the case for anybody here.
Right.
We should be talking about the success. Diverse teams, end of story, do better. They do better. Diversity of thought, background, color, creed, sexual preference, all of it makes a better organization, makes a better team, no matter how you think about it, and makes better lifelong friends. And we need to start screaming those successes, because those people that are in organizations in leadership positions that are not on board, that can't get out of their own way and have that really unfortunate viewpoints, they're going to start seeing other organizations that think better grow and be more successful. And that I think is going to be key as well, hopefully.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to bring up one company I've run into, and it's not in the cyberspace, they're in the development space. But these people help HR companies recruit developers. They come out of Singapore. And if any of you have been familiar, Julian, you've been around the world. If you've ever been to Singapore, it's truly a multiracial, very, female entrepreneurs. And they do a good job in Singapore, is the bottom line. But this is a company that comes out of Singapore. They've recently also now opened up in London. And this is a concept, if we can figure out the cyber equivalent to it, I think it's great. You got a job, oftentimes for developers, part of the job application is you got to submit some code. They give you a problem, write some code on, right? And even the people looking at the code know that it's a guy named Larry Whiteside Jr. or a woman named Heather who submitted the code, and already they have notions in their head, right? These people just make it blind. It's machine graded code, and it tells you who the best. If you're saying you're hiring a candidate to do this kind of code, or, this kind of skill, it tells you who wrote the best code. And you don't know who that person is, whether it's a man or a woman or a black person or a white person or a Southeast Asian person or what have you. It just tells you who wrote the best code. Well, what can we do to unfortunately, to take the humans out of it a little bit and get to who's the best qualified for this?
That's happening.
Well,
So
well, go ahead, Larry. I'm sorry.
But so there's some of that happening, right? So there's some of that where they're utilizing cyber ranges, right, to create testing mechanisms for candidates that they want to bring on board in technical roles. But the thing you have to understand is our field is so broad that works well for technical roles, but it doesn't work well for these non-technical roles, right? Additionally, we aren't completely taking the other characteristics out. We're utilizing that as a factor, right? So those organizations I know doing it are utilizing that as an additional factor, but they aren't taking the other characteristics out. And so it's a challenge.
And if you don't fix the rest of it, you're not going to keep them. You may get them in the door that way, but you're not going to keep them. If the unconscious bias is still there, or any of the other things this panelist talked about is still there, they will come in the door excited. They will be out the door 90 days later.
Absolutely.
Well,
Pay
the other
bias
deal
is
is
another factor.
Yeah. Well, what I would tell you though is even the test itself, in the way it's laid out, also has bias built into it.
Sure.
And I know of organizations that have tried this. The issue that you run into, so in Singapore, it's a lot easier, even though it's a very diverse environment. You have 3 primary Asian cultures and white people, and math and science is very important in that environment. And so using a test is kind of a way of normalizing things there in that fashion. The issue you have with cybersecurity, especially if you're looking for people who are new to the field or more entry level, it's how do you construct a test that tells me what they can learn, not necessarily what they know.
What they know, yes.
That's the issue.
It doesn't help with the 2 things we care about: the passion, right, or the big thing those tests tend to fail in that, especially in our world. And with Larry and I, what we used to do when we worked together, it was all about that passion, that ability to dig and dig and dig. And you remember those nights? Yep. We would be there all night.
Nights.
We had to be, because we wanted to be. And the joke was who was going to drink the largest big gulp, right? Because it was work all night because we wanted to be there. We wanted to be together. We wanted all to do this thing. It's passion and learn. So
then it goes to Larry's point earlier that you need to be around people that do this so you can mimic and see that it's possible for yourself. And so you can get recommended by your network. And that's why organizations like ICMCP, they're so critical, because they have that network for minorities who can refer jobs to them. But again, if you're from an environment where you don't have the ability to form those relationships or see that people like you, look like you in these types of roles, then it's a lot harder for you to get your career started in this field.
But it goes back to what Larry said at the beginning, it's education.
Yeah.
You got to know it exists. Heather, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, because I just thought it's something you said, Olivia, just made me think of something. I think that because of the pandemic, with everybody working from home, we actually have so many opportunities in front of us right now.
I agree.
And one of them is reaching, diverse communities, remote communities, underrepresented communities. Of course, there is one qualifier, and that is that they have reliable internet access, which is a whole other conversation, because we know that we have a digital divide. But that issue aside, we can reach people right now remotely through technology that we might not, otherwise have the opportunity to reach in a face-to-face environment. So I think we need to take advantage of that right now.
Yeah, instead of people like you taking an entire day to speak to one school, you could do 10 schools in a day.
Yep.
Right.
Alan.
I got to cut it, guys, because we're way over time. I will mention that there are many high schools with cybersecurity programs now, including one right here by my house. But that being said, rather than going around the room and thanking you and last comments, here's what I would like to leave our audience with. Larry, what's the website for your organization?
Thank you. It's www.icmcp.org.
Okay, so check that out. Sounds great. Have at it. Heather, I know you're running, was it Cyber for Girls? Is that the name of it?
Yes, Cyber Day for Girls. And if people want to learn more about Cyber Day for Girls, go to IBM, www, of course, ibm.org.
Oh, awesome.
Great.
Yep.
Olivia, I would mention to you, and I'll mention it too, I have a good friend, Chenzi Wang. Chenzi was a VP she's a CISO. I think she's been on our show before, many of our shows over there. Chenzi runs a great women CISO group that Olivia, I'll make an introduction. She's now, and Chenzi started her own women-run venture firm called Rain Capital.
Yep. She's no longer at Splunk?
No, she left a while ago.
Oh yeah,
she started a VC, a little venture firm herself that she's running. She got some good backing
for her.
Yeah.
I'm really happy.
It's called Rain Capital, and Chenzi's great. Should have been great to have on this panel. Actually, I'm doing a women's CISO panel with Chenzi, and the Jody, our associate producer, is putting that together. But anyway, guys and gals, men, women, thank you so much for giving us a really great discussion. We could probably go on for another 2 hours here and not even scratch, but there's something to it. Take it in, look at it. We'll be back in another 2 weeks for another CISO talk. We'll announce the sessions. But thank you very much, everyone. Mitchell, as always, Matt, as always, my co-host.
Thank you.
Julian, one more time, we got to get you in here.
All right.
This is Kimmel for CISO Talk. Take care, everyone.
Thanks,
everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and Media Ops CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
All right, for something old today, we're going to go back to October to DevOps Experience and a presentation by Charity Majors. I first became aware of Charity and the Honeycomb story maybe 2 or 3 years ago at a Jenkins World, Cloudbees World. Everyone was talking about some of the thought-provoking ideas coming out of Honeycomb and Charity. We were lucky enough to have her present on the socio-technical path to high-performing teams, or the social technical path on to high-performing teams. I think you'll enjoy the presentation. Here's Charity Majors of Honeycomb.
This talk is called The Socio-Technical Path to High-Performing Teams, aka Observability and the Glorious Future. My name is Charity, Nipsey Tipsy on Twitter. I am the co-founder, CTO of Honeycomb, and the co-author of Database Reliability Engineering. Also, in about 3 months, Liz Fong Jones and I will have O'Reilly Observability book coming out. This is a talk about teams. Teams exist so that we can, reason about each other in a scalable way. I like to think of teams as kind of grade 5 for people, right? It's the team provides a framework for resiliency and redundancy and load balancing. And I feel like we underestimate just how much of an impact teams have on our lives and our careers and our growth and development. I would argue that the teams that we join define our careers more than any other thing, more than where you go to school, more than your industry, even more than your own personal personal. Although they're very intertwined. We'll see later on. On a personal note, I've been incredibly in the teams that I've worked on, with a couple of exceptions. There were a couple of startups that I did have two jobs that I really don't look back on super fondly, and they were very different from each other, right? One was kind of your traditional Silicon Valley, startup, where we got praised for pulling all-nighters, long commute, didn't see my manager for an entire year. And another was, I rebound job from that one, and I went straight to another that had great people, walking distance to my work, and also very out-of-date technology. And I spent my days translating Word documents into Puppet recipes. Very different jobs, but the way they made me feel, very much the same, right? Even though they had almost nothing in common with each other, it left me feeling discouraged and burned out. Honestly, I wasn't working more than I'd ever worked before, but I got more burned out than I'd ever been. Turns out, I knew this experientially before I really understood why these teams were good or bad. And I knew it because on the high-performing teams, I had motivation. I had autonomy, I had mastery, and I had meaning, which is, this is what elevates our work from labor into craft, right? This is what makes our work part of a fulfilling life. This is what makes us, think about it in the shower as we're getting ready in the morning. I feel like once you've experienced work that isn't just work, but it's work, it's really hard to ever go back. It's also incredibly difficult to craft these systems in a way that produces party work instead of labor work, which is why you can't really look at just the teams or just the systems. You have to look at the whole thing, right? The socio-technical system that you're embedded in, because it's all interconnected. You can go and read a lot of white papers and stuff on the internet about this. They use different terms that I'm going to use. All this means is that it's a feedback loop, right? Your system is a unique snowflake. You can't take anyone else's rule book and apply it to your situation. You have to figure it out yourself from scratch, which is why it's fun. It's why this is interesting. There are, of course, some patterns that we can learn from each other and stories that we can tell, and that's what I'm going to try and do in this talk. But the fun and exciting and terrifying thing of this is every system is different. Let's start with the socio part. How well does your team perform? Now, we have not had much science in this regard until Nicole and Jez and Jean went and did a bunch of science and came up with, there are actually four questions I think every single manager, every lead, everyone in tech who cares and is tasked with these systems should be tracking constantly. How often do you deploy? How long does it take for your code to go live after you write it? How many of your deploys fail? How long does it take to recover from an outage? And I would add a fifth. Everyone should be tracking how often they get out of hours. That's not all. If you've read the Stripe Developer Report, then you know that we waste a lot of time, a lot of time. 42% is the optimistic self-reported statistic that they came up with. 42% of our time is wasted doing stuff that doesn't move the business forward, where we're not learning anything, we're not creating anything new, we're just doing the shit that we have to do in order to get to the stuff that we want to do or that we need to do. It's orienting ourselves in time and space. It's reproducing bugs. It's working on the wrong thing and then having to go back and undo it and work on the right thing. And one of the biggest obstacles that we have in tech is that we have just come to accept this as normal. This is just acceptable, that half of our time is wasted. It is not. It is not. Back to the DORA report though, there's a really wide gap between the teams that have started to really get, their shit in order and the teams that haven't. Deployment frequency, the bottom 50% of teams deploy between once per month. Elite teams, quote unquote elite, deploy many times a day. And if you look, year over year, what you see is that elite, I don't really like that term, whatever, elite category is getting bigger and better. While the bottom 50% is actually losing ground, because if you're standing still in tech, you're losing ground. What this should tell us is, first of all, it really pays to be on a high-performing team. Like really pays. And here's why. Like, we often think that, like, how do you get to be a great engineer, right? Or how do you get to be a great team, right? You build a great team by hiring the best engineers. That is bullshit. It's actually the other way around. You become a great engineer by being on a great team. And just look at this, like, which one of these two kids is going to be a better engineer in 2 years? The one who gets 300 opportunities to learn, 3,000 deploys per year opportunities to learn, or the one who gets 5 deploys per year and spends most of their time firefighting? Firefighting is not creative labor, not fundamentally. It'd be fun, it's a different story. Our biases tell us that, great people make great teams, but I've seen this over and over again where, an engineer from, one of the elite teams, quote unquote, joins a team in the mid-performing, levels, and 3 to 6 months later, that's how fast they're shipping, right? Because the rate at which you're shipping code is not governed by your personal skill level. It's governed by the infrastructure. It's governed by the best practices. It's governed by the tools around you. It's governed by, everything that has gone into constructing this environment. Your productivity will rise or fall to match that of the team that you join.
Setting aside the question of whether you even can evaluate the best engineers, people often try to stuff their teams with people from Google and Facebook, and that's just backwards. By the way, also, good managers don't hire people. They build teams, they craft teams, they grow teams. They don't expect experts to show up in their doorstep fully formed. They accept the need to develop their talent, and they will invest a lot of effort into doing so. Every engineering org actually has a mandate. It's not just the responsibility that you have to your customers, although absolutely there is that. There's also the responsibility that you have to your team, the people who build it and who run it and who maintain it every day. I don't believe that these two are in tension, which is sometimes how we tend to talk about them. Oh, well, if we have a lower quality of service for our customers, that will make our people happy. I absolutely categorically do not believe that that's true. I believe that, in fact, the only way that you can sustainably have either of those is they build on each other. Nobody likes to make their customers upset, right? It's actually a quality of life issue for us as engineers who take pride in our business and our craft. We want to do well for people, right? And the way that we kickstart this feedback loop is by thinking about ownership, right? And ownership begins with observability. So let's move from the social part to the technical part. Tools. I don't know your systems, so I can't prescribe exactly what tools that you absolutely need to invest in. But I've seen a lot of systems, and I feel like I can take a pretty good guess. Observability is where it starts for the same reason that I put on my glasses before I go and drive down the freeway at 80 miles per hour. If you can't see what you're doing, you're just going to waste a lot of time. And I have yet to see a single company that has invested enough energy into their deployment software, their deployment frameworks. Most companies haven't even really fulfilled the promise of continuous delivery yet. It's like we got through CI, and now we just say CI/CD, but we don't actually do CD, and that's a problem. Observability is a term that I just threw out there, and you may or may not have heard me ranting about this already. You may or may not have already read about this, but what it means is, this is straight up borrowed from control theory, mechanical engineering, where observability means, can you understand what's happening inside your system just by observing it from the outside? And if you apply this to software, it means, can you understand any system state without shipping new code, without shipping code to handle that system state, right? any asshole can tell what's going on, can explain their system state if they could predict it in advance and write custom code to handle it, right? But it's about gathering your information at the right level of abstraction so you can slice and dice, and ask new questions, understand new system states without having to ship new code. Now, I have written a lot about this, and I'm not going to even try and dive into all of it here. Suffice it to say that there's a lot of bullshit out there right now. People who are saying that they have observability tools that they don't, but not by my technical definition. And the stuff that I'm talking about requires some of that technical definition in order to be effective. So some of the ways that you can pattern match and tell if they're doing generic observability or technical observability is by looking at the data types, right? If it's metrics, if it's unstructured logs, not observability. Anything that requires you to define indexes or schemas up front, not observability. If it's based off of these arbitrarily wide structured data blobs or canonical logs, yeah, probably is. And there's more high cardinality, high dimensionality. There's more in that link if you want to read about it. TLDR, a lot of people stop at this point and they're like, yeah, that sounds great, but I don't really have time to invest in observability right now. Definitely it's on my list. At some point I'm going to get around to it. I would argue with that. I would argue that not having observability, with these complex modern systems where you've got microservices, where you've got, novel scenarios every day, it's like taking off down the freeway without your glasses on. It's just, I mean, it's your time to waste, but if you want to waste it, go for it. Anyway, Liz and I wrote up this maturity model, and we tried to make it like a choose your own adventure, right? So, because we don't know your system state, but you can go up and look up, you can look at each of the 5 categories and try to find yourself in them and see which of them you're weakest in versus strongest in, whether it's resiliency or complexity, tech debt, and then the ones where you're like, yeah, I recognize myself in the weak description, those are some areas to invest, right? But I want to talk a little bit more about why this and why now, because observability hasn't always been this important, obviously, because we've gotten all this way without it, right? The reason it's happening now is because complexity is just off the charts, right? Like it's, it used to be that we'd have the app, right? And the database, and all that complexity was bound up inside the application itself. And if you really needed to understand what's going on, you'd go attach a debugger, you'd step through it. Well, now we've got many services and it's hopping the networks, you can't, right? So a lot of these software issues have been sort of thrust into the domain of operational stuff very rapidly. And the reason that observability is what unlocks the key to ownership is that technical observability results in a situation where you can slice and dice and say, these rows here, like these requests are different from those requests after I made this change, right? It allows you to compare them at a very granular level. And if you don't have that, you're just guessing, right? And maybe they're very good guesses. Maybe they're very educated guesses. Maybe you've been doing this for a long time. You can pattern match very effectively. Fuck, I miss being able to go, I see your dashboards. It's Redis. Like, I miss that. Like, I loved playing God. It was fantastic. But you can only do that if your systems are like rhyming in the same ways that they fail over and over again. And if you don't have those systems that are failing in the same repeatable ways, and if you don't have the right tooling, you're going to really struggle to connect these feedback loops that are at the heart of a well-constructed, a well-understood system. I want to give you an example because I think that all this is kind of difficult to talk about at a just like high level. Let's take this example of, floaters are loading slowly, not for everyone, but for some people. In the good old days of, 5 years ago, with a lamp stack. Some of the scenarios would probably be like these. We're out of capacity, got dashboards, maybe we're, currencies high, or we've run out of connections, whatever. Like, you can build a lamp stack, you can look at it, size it up, go, I can predict 80% of the ways the system's going to fail. And you can write monitoring checks for those things. That's great. And I'm not ragging on monitoring checks, because you should absolutely have monitoring checks for all the things you can predict will fail. It's a great shortcut. Okay, but now let's look at the same exact scenario, but for, microservices platform. Like, these are actually taken directly from outages that we had at Parse and or Instagram. Like, these are not things that are going to happen over and over. These are weirdo problems. They're going to happen once, right? And historically, we've put all this effort into, we understand the outage if we're lucky, and then we're going to do a postmortem, and we're going to craft this perfect dashboard so that next time this happens, we'll find it immediately, and we put it in our run books, we educate everyone. This is great if your systems are failing repeatedly in the same old ways. It is a complete and utter waste of time if it's never going to happen again. You have an observable system when your team can quickly and reliably diagnose any new system state, any new behavior, without predicting it could happen, without understanding it was going to happen, without having monitoring checks for it. It puts you in this continuous conversation with your code. And when you're instrumenting and you have this conversation with your code, right, it forms this beautiful feedback loop that I think of as like observability-driven development. And no knock on TDD. TDD is great. Most effective software, movement of my lifetime. But it stops at the border of your laptop, right? Like, it is effective because it abstracts away everything about reality. It's just like, doesn't exist, which means that it's a very limited utility. And yes, we should still write tests, but that, it used to be that your test, you could catch 80, 90% of all things would happen. Now, maybe 20 or 30, right? And so you have to start thinking about writing code and instrumenting it. Like, as you're writing the code, you need to be instrumenting it with an eye towards, how will future me understand this, right? In an hour when I've shipped it. And how will I know if something's not working? You should never accept a PR if you can't say, how will this break, and explain it, right? And you should have, the reason why it's important to have CI/CD is so that interval of time between when you write the code and when the code is live in production is as short as possible, so that you still have all that original intent stuffed in your head, right? So you're watching it, so that you merge to main, you get coffee, 5-10 minutes later, you're back and it's live, and you go and you look at it and you ask yourself, is it doing what I expected it to do? Is it working as intended? And does anything else look weird? And because you're in there every day, you're not biased towards only looking at production when it's weird. You understand what normal looks like. If you break up that feedback loop, if you make it so that bugs don't get caught by the person who wrote them right after they ship them, if you make it so that the software engineer isn't even looking at their code or isn't even instrumenting their code, or if someone else is looking at it days later, you lose that beautiful opportunity where you can catch 80 to 90% of all problems before users ever even get a chance to notice that it exists, right? That is the most powerful moment in the software development lifecycle, is when you've written it and you're looking at it right there. Starting to yell at people here. On-call is where shit gets real, right? On-call is for everyone who writes code. And I do not say this, I know that, so I come from ops, and no, absolutely, I will admit that we have a reputation for masochism that is well-deserved. And the idea here is not to invite all of engineering dumb into our, shabby hut, right? The idea is to not make everyone suffer. I swear to God, I'm over 30, I don't want to get woken up anymore either, right? The idea is that this is how we make it better, right? This is the only way to lift us out of this, react, response, firefighting mode into a mode where it is rare that you get woken up out of error hours, vanishingly rare. You cannot achieve that if you have different people running the system than writing the system. You can only achieve that if you have a single tight feedback loop. You can't gift your eyes to another team, right? Oh yeah, take all this context from my head and go look at that shit that I just wrote. It doesn't work that way. And it's on us in ops to stop being all, stay out of production, right? We need to be welcoming. We need to encourage curiosity. We need to build tools that, build guardrails that emphasize ownership, and then we don't punish people. Progressive deployment is the new term of art for, deploying all the things. and I'm not, I want to be clear here that I'm not saying that all staging environments have no value. I'm not saying that at all. There is a value to staging. What I'm saying is that we've gotten the ordering wrong. We've taken engineering teams and gone, okay, go spend months building these elaborate, staging and test and desktop and laptop environments for everybody. And then, we get to production and people are like, oh, well, we're out of time. We don't have any more cycles to invest in prod, right? We'll let ops handle it. All I'm saying is that is backwards. Please invest in production first. Those lines that I showed you, the bubbles, remember from 2018 to 2019, where the 7% of elite teams were up to like 20%, and that bubble's getting bigger and higher. That is because those are the teams who are embracing this whole constellation of tooling that is around shifting the center of gravity to production, to reality, right? Feature flags, incredibly important. SLOs, incredibly important, right? All of this tooling around running your shit in prod safely is important. I want to quickly, I want to show you how quickly this adds up and gets us to that 42% of our time is wasted, right? This is the kind of thing that happened, most weeks, let's say, throughout my career. Engineer merges a diff, and because it doesn't automatically key off of that and deploy, have to wait for somebody to come along and manually trigger a deploy, right? So engineer merges a diff, hours pass, more diffs get merged, right? At some point, someone triggers a deploy. It might have hours or days worth of merges at that point. The deploy fails, or it takes on the site, whatever. Page is on call. Well, on call is probably a very different person on a very different team than the person who just triggered the deploy. They might not even know that each other are both working on this, right? So on call goes, something's wrong, starts rolling back, starts investigating. You start bisecting, just trying to figure out which one of these diffs was at fault, right? Maybe you cut another half dozen branches or try deploying a bunch more times, trying to figure out which one is the error. And this eats up, your day. It eats up time from every person who's shipped a diff who might be the guilty one, right? It eats up on calls time. At the end of the day, this might have taken up, 4 or 5 people, can't actually get their shit done because they've gotten roped into something went wrong with deploy production. Everybody gets burned out. Everybody's bitching about how much on-call sucks, how much they don't want to be responsible for deploys. How much time is elapsed there? A lot. Okay, now multiply that by days, weeks, years, teams, and you suddenly see that's where all our time's going. Let's look at a virtuous feedback loop that is accomplished. This is achieved by nothing other than making it so that CI/CD is real, right? Making it so that when you merge to main, it automatically triggers a deploy and automatically goes live. So engineer merges the diff, kicks off an automatic CI/CD and deploy. A few minutes later, deploy fails, notifies the person who just did the merge, who reverts to safety, knows exactly what she just did, so she quickly fixes it, adds more test instrumentation, commits a fix, it deploys again, time elapsed 10 minutes. It really pays to be on a high-performing team. And you really have to internalize this truth that speed is safety. Speed is balance. This is like riding a bike. If you slow down, you fall off, or being sharp or something. You slow down, you die, right? Speed is safety. And just briefly on the build versus buy, this is something, there's no one right answer, but it's pretty clear that more and more work is for engineers of all types, we're trying to spend more of our time on our core business differentiators and less time on infrastructure. Infrastructure is the stuff that we have to build in order to get to the stuff that we want to build. And wherever possible, you should make that someone else's problem. Because if that's their mission, they will do it better than you. You should do your mission best. You can tell I'm from ops because this is how I feel about software in general. Build reluctantly. All code is legacy code. Kill your darlings. My friend PVH likes to say that the worst code of all is code that you have to write and maintain yourself. The best code of all is code that Someone else writes and maintains for you. Sorry, I misquoted him. The best code of all is no code whatsoever. Second best code is code that someone else writes and maintains for you. The worst code is any code other than that. Also, it's the job of senior engineers to amplify hidden costs. You need to point out when things go well so that they don't go unnoticed, right? When you've invested some time and engineering energy in something that is paying off, like keep bringing it up, keep pointing it out so that you can reinforce those good patterns. And when you can see like that we're heading down a bad path, point it out, not just once, right? I hate repeating myself too, but we have to repeat ourselves. Assume the decision makers are making the best decisions that they can, given their limited information. And you often have access to instincts, intuition, information that would guide us in a better direction, but you haven't surfaced it to the people who need it. Vendor engineering is going to be one of the biggest growth opportunities of the next decade. I guarantee you. It doesn't mean that you like, if your big business differentiators is like running a big website, it doesn't mean you don't need an observability team. You do, right? But not to write a time series database, right? You should get a vendor to do your observability, like the core product, but you should have an observability team that is focused on being the glue between that product and all of your other engineering teams, right? Making libraries and modules, making examples, making, consistent interfaces, use cases, examples, docs, right? Constantly keeping up on what's out there and bringing the team like a proposal anytime that, technology has leapfrogged. I feel like I really want to put a nail in the coffin of resume-driven development, or, people who want to be put on these very prestigious projects where they write absolutely useless software because it will get them, promoted to the next level. And the only way that we can do that is by being very conscious that whatever we praise and promote people for is what we will get more of. If what you want to see is engineers who are ruthlessly efficient and who have the business in mind, promote on that. Don't promote on raw difficulty of algorithms that they write. That's bullshit. That will get you people who write so much bullshit code. Your system is a snowflake. High-performing teams both contribute to and are a consequence of a well-running, well-tuned socio-technical system. It is the job of every senior engineer, manager, everyone who understands how these systems start to work has a stake in making sure that they are run well. Most of us have systems that are just like hairballs that the cat coughed up that we have never understood. We've never understood them. And every day we ship more code we don't understand to these hairballs that we've never understood. And then we wonder why it's a tire fire. It's messed up. And it doesn't have to be that way. If we actually put our glasses on, if we invest in observability, if we invest in instrumentation, if we don't buy this line that, our tools will tell us what we're supposed to look at and what it means. No, they won't. Any machine can tell you when there's a spike. Only humans can attribute meaning to that spike. Where are we going? Well, systems are getting more complex, exponentially more complex. And this means we need to rely on each other more than ever, because none of us can fit it entirely in our own heads. And I feel like there's something kind of beautiful about this, because the next generation of systems, they aren't going to be built and run by people who are just checking in, putting in their 8 hours a day. It's gotten too hard. It's gotten too complicated. You have to care too much about what you're doing. You have to invest too much of your creative self. You have to rely on so many other people on your team. Every time you're building one of these systems, you understand the part that you're on at the moment. But when you're debugging it, you have to understand everything that everyone on your team is working on. And we need to be building tools that help, be our shared brain, right? Take it out of our heads where we can't share it and reason about it, and put it into a tool where we can. You can't model these systems in your head and reason about them. And if you try, you're going to be outcompeted by teams with better focus, better tools. Run books and canned playbooks just don't work anymore. Our systems are too unpredictable. And your labor is a scarce and precious resource. Yeah, if your heart isn't in your job, you won't do the best job that you can do. and you should probably lend it to those who are worthy of it. Like, you only get one career. I feel like in the same way that we need to raise our standards for, our systems, and not accept these hairballs anymore, like, you should possibly raise your standards for your career as well. You only get one of them. Seek out the high-performing teams, because that's where your career will take off by leaps and bounds when you're surrounded by people who care as much as you do. Not mired in tech debt and shitty processes. I think this is a really neat moment in time where the underpinnings of technology are really moving towards a world that's more distributed, more egalitarian, more distributed, and I feel like it's a real opportunity for us to make things better for the humans who run it as well. We have a dual mandate, all of us, to our teams as well as our customers, and we can do better. So let's do it. The end.
Next up, we have our Chief Content Officer, Charlene O'Hanlon. Charlene has news around the Media Ops site and world today, as well as a webinar preview and a interview with Jonathan Weiss from Software AG regarding IoT and its role in helping battle climate change and technology's impact on climate change in general.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. Today is December 14th and this is Charlene O'Hanlon. I am here now with the Monday edition of the news headlines. First up on DevOps.com, we have an article that looks at the growing use of low-code in building applications. Specifically, we look at the findings of a study that discusses the economic landscape for organizations in the coming year and how low-code fits in. As more organizations shift to a digital-only environment, more apps than ever are being created. However, finding and hiring talent is difficult, and some companies have even cut back on staff. 1/3 of organizations taking part in a survey had already instituted a hiring freeze. So to help stay on top of the larger workload and a smaller workforce, a whopping 85% of survey respondents believe low-code and no-code technologies will become omnipresent in their industry. Now, we've been talking about low-code and the rise of the citizen developer for at least 5 years now, as long as I've been here, and it's really fascinating to see low-code coming into its own. But it is important to note that low-code doesn't replace engineering talent. Rather, it's there to supplement, to let non-engineering folks create the easy stuff while engineers solve the difficult problems. We expect to see more innovation coming out of the low-code space in 2021, and if these survey results are any indication, we are in for a good show. We also take a look at the SD-WAN technology and the pros and cons for its adoption in 2021. As with low-code development, we've been hearing a lot of noise about SD-WAN this year, especially in the rush to shift to work-from-home environments, as networking it is a networking option that is high-performing, robust, and able to handle the increased capacity needs of remote workers. SD-WAN provides branch performance that matches campus networks. It is a beneficial technology to support pretty much any and all of the tasks necessary for work to continue unabated from wherever. However, there are still a few concerns plaguing SD-WAN, including quality of service, security, and a high learning curve to plan and manage it. This article takes a look at each of the benefits and challenges and offers up some potential solutions. If you're considering adopting SD-WAN, this article is definitely worth checking out. Finally, we have an article on achieving speed and quality in rapid application development environments, which pretty much means everywhere these days. Again, it's all about that tension that exists between DevOps and security teams, but this article takes a different tack on how to fix it. Namely, using tools and technologies to make developers' lives a bit easier. Incorporating AppSec into the DevOps pipeline, adding automation throughout the SDLC, and offering developer-specific security training are all ways to put the sec in DevSecOps and reduce that tension. Over on Container Journal, we have an article on container security and how it can be improved in the CI/CD pipeline. Containers and Kubernetes are becoming more prevalent in the DevOps space because they allow for rapid deployment and help manage the issues of running the programs in various computing environments. However, questions have arisen regarding their security. Containers are often reused and can contain leftover code and important keys for other parts of the pipeline. This article calls for implementing application security tools in the CI/CD pipeline correctly, which can yield excellent results in tackling potential security risks. Scanning code images early on in the development process can identify security issues before they become security breaches. But that's not enough. Streamlining the pipeline is also recommended. Ensuring that an automated system is sending all reports to the same dashboard can grant much-needed visibility to find and remediate problems early. It also saves a great deal of work when it comes to fixing issues, as fewer code corrections and plugins need to be written. Not to mention, it's easier to see whether and how any new code impacts other parts of the pipeline early enough to make changes before they break the build. All right, over on Security Boulevard, we take a look at the rising threat of third-party security threats and how organizations should adopt a risk management strategy for their vendors. It sounds simple enough, but like wearing masks in public, some third-party vendors will not play along. And you need all of your vendors to participate in a risk management program for it to be successful. This article offers up 3 ways that organizations can get their vendors on board with third-party risk management, and when it might be time to ask for help in creating and implementing a third-party risk management strategy. And finally, we have an article that discusses the still very real threats targeting the hotel industry. This year, it pretty much sucked to be a hotel operator thanks to COVID-19. However, that didn't stop hackers from going after hotel networks. Hotels are attractive to hackers because they capture personal and financial information and have a large number of data touch points, each of which can leave information vulnerable. But the huge drop in bookings means hotels are even more vulnerable this year, and one massive data breach could put the hotel right out of business. This article offers up some ways hotels can shore up their security to keep themselves safe from hackers as they struggle to stay afloat in these trying business times. All right, that's it for the Monday edition of the News Headlines. Please check back with me tomorrow when I'll have a fresh new batch for you. Until then, stay safe.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I am here now with Jonathan Weiss, who's the Vice President of Emerging Technologies at Software AG. John, thanks so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
All right. So first, tell me a little bit about Software AG. Where do you guys play?
Great question. So we're not really a household name, I think in some respects, a household brand, but we probably impact just about every household that's listening to this or watching this. We're kind of like the secret sauce or the glue that holds a lot of enterprises together behind the scenes. So some folks might call that middleware, but we're really well known for integration and analytics that happens behind the scenes of some of the countries and the world's largest telecommunication providers, financial institutions, banks, insurance companies, things like that.
Okay. All right. Great. So you guys are middleware is now the new API. And, I kind of hear that people are calling APIs actually kind of the new middleware. So is that, are you guys kind of dealing a lot with APIs as well? Or are you guys still kind of keeping the middleware moniker?
Yeah, absolutely. We offer all kinds of API lifecycle management type solutions in the market. In fact, if you read any analyst report, whether it's Gartner, Forrester, anybody, if it's got API in the title, if that's the report, you're going to find us in it. We're pretty big. We've been doing this a long time. This is now 51 years in business for us. We operate in 70 countries, 5,000 employees. So we're a pretty sizable software company.
Excellent. Well, I would imagine in those 51 years or so, you guys have seen a lot happen in the tech space, a lot regarding the evolution of technology from, the big mainframe computers down to personal computers and into our pockets. So great history that you guys have there. When we're talking about the history of technology, we also kind of have to take a look to the future, nod to the future, if you will, and especially with the way that technology has helped us during the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic so far. I know there's been a lot of talk around security and and the locking down of networks, especially home networks and such. And I know IoT has been a very, very large part of that conversation. And it's almost as though IoT in a way has kind of been demonized by a lot of folks who kind of consider it as like the open gateway, if you will, for hackers to get into corporate networks through the home smart devices. But it's not all bad, right? I mean, IoT's been around for about, I would say, a good 10, 15 years or so in its current iteration, and just kind of evolved into kind of the devices that we know today. But there's been a lot of work in the IoT space regarding ways that it can actually help environment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, whether it's prison cells, bank vaults, or IoT devices, people always get in and out of things they're not supposed to get in or out of, right?
True that.
But it's been a number of years since I've seen some really crazy examples of, let's say, large scale type hacks and things like that. So I think as a whole, not saying it doesn't happen, but I think as a whole, it's gotten a lot more secure than it was a few years ago. That's for sure.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about IoT's role in kind of working or helping, kind of stem the bad stuff that's happening with climate change. Obviously with COVID, we've had actually a positive impact on the environment through COVID, because people have been kind of sequestered and not driving as much, and there's been less damage to the environment. But I can't really say that IoT has had a huge role in that. But what are some of the ways that you guys have seen that IoT is actually helping organizations fight climate change?
That's a great question. I think it depends on the industry that you look at. So when you look at oil and gas refineries, things like that, these are processes that typically produce a lot of greenhouse gases, volatile organic compounds that come out of refinement processes, things like that. Like think about the big smokestacks that you might see going down the highway in Houston, for example, right? Organizations like those are using IoT to monitor in real time the types of chemicals and off gases that are being released into the environment. And so in real time, if they're going above certain thresholds and things like that, they can either stop a process or adjust it so that they're not sending excess pollutants out. That's probably one of the more let's say top of mind type things, right? Like the obvious, hey, we're doing something, it's causing pollution, so let's monitor it so it doesn't cause quite as much pollution. But I think there are a lot of IoT applications that are being put to use that might not be quite as obvious. So if you think about all of the emphasis on reducing the carbon footprint in manufacturing that's happening, a lot of big manufacturers have initiatives right now to reduce the carbon footprint of their manufacturing processes. And there's a lot that goes into that. It's increased efficiencies throughout the entire not just the entire factory, really the entire supply chain. But when you look at a factory, how efficient is my process? How can I do tasks one time so I don't have to run the machines more than I have to redo parts, things like that? Because all of that requires power, which then, of course, contributes to the larger carbon footprint. So stuff like that. And also logistics. Think about all the trucks, especially this time of year. It's almost the holiday season, lots of deliveries. I know I'm getting a lot at my house. So IoT is being used to help manage that whole supply chain so that even deliveries are being done more efficiently. The routes are optimized so that we're not having all the exhaust come out, and lots of really good examples.
So, a lot of these things are things that have kind of evolved with as the technology has evolved. But are there kind of some next generation applications, if you will, of IoT in the climate change space that organizations are just now kind of getting to know or are adopting in their organizations? Because we hear about like the climate control systems within organizations being able to kind of monitor and control the flow of air conditioning and heating systems. If there's nobody around, they can kind of monitor smartly how many people are in a room and kind of adjust the temperature thusly. And other applications of IoT in that respect, but is kind of going a level deeper. Are there systems, maybe embedded systems or edge systems that are kind of out there that are kind of helping combat climate change in ways that maybe we aren't so aware of?
Yeah, I think they're great examples when it comes to smart building management, things like that. Probably more relevant now than ever because most of our square footage is not even being used because everybody's at home. So now it's not even a question of who's doing that stuff. It's who's doing it better and who's more mature with the IoT solutions that they're bringing to market for their customers. Some things that might be a little bit more cutting edge, especially in processes, things that are either electricity production or industrial use cases. Those two, by the way, make up some of the largest, say, creators or generators of greenhouse gases or the largest carbon footprints, that in transportation, all of which are starting to do a lot at the edge. So taking compute power away from centralized data centers and clouds, as we call them today, which is just a lot of other people's computers. But now it's bringing stuff down to the edge so that we can do more decentralized type computing. And that has a massive impact because data centers by themselves create a tremendous amount of strain on the environment that a lot of people might not think about that. Just to give you an idea of how much. So data centers as a whole create just about the same carbon footprint as the entire airline industry. So it's massive. And just building these things alone, it's about a $20 billion a year business just constructing data centers. So that the impact that all of the cloud compute has is pretty detrimental, I think, in many respects. And so a lot of organizations in these, especially in these segments, are starting to do more and more within the four walls of a warehouse, the four walls of a data center, or even at the edge on these vehicles that might be involved in the supply chain, whether it's bringing goods from a warehouse to a factory or from a distribution center to your home. So I don't know, hopefully that answers the question a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point that you bring up about the carbon footprint of these data centers because, so many people are, or organizations have talked about using, cloud services and cloud computing and, as kind of a way to reduce their carbon footprint because they don't have to build out the data centers. But basically, they're kind of shifting their responsibility, if you will. At least that's what it sounds like.
It's kind of like when we say something's for free, right? Nothing's ever free. There's always a cost associated with doing something. Now, whether you shift the burden to someone else, right? Maybe that's a different question, but it's a really interesting dynamic. Most people, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. It's in the cloud. It's not my environment. I don't have the energy bills to pay for it. So to me, it doesn't really exist, right? But it certainly does exist somewhere. And I think, what's really interesting, even if you take a practical application to this or make it a tangible example, because it might be hard for people to understand, okay, as much CO2 as the airline business, I don't know what that means. But a lot of us, if we're cost conscious or we care about energy consumption, things like that, we'll turn lights off in our house. Most people don't put all the lights on all day and leave for the day, right? They turn lights off. To the point that that's even one of the leading IoT devices, right? Smart light bulbs. Just to give you an idea. So, and this is a number of years ago, I read a report from Google that said every Google search entered, every time somebody types something and hits enter in Google, that registers just about the same energy consumption as leaving a 60-watt light bulb on for 17 seconds.
Wow.
Think about
Interesting.
That. Right? That's a lot of light bulbs.
That is,
now, I don't know how many people are running Google searches, but I tend to think that's a whole lot of light bulbs. So that's the amount of impact we're having from just more of a tangible reference.
That's it's definitely food for thought there when you're thinking about it, because you know, I was trying to describe encyclopedias to my son. I showed him some. We went into the library and I said, "You see this? This is what I had for Google when I was growing up." And you know, he's obviously never known anything different, but you know, it's nothing for him to type into Google's, you know, into something into Google and get an answer. But I wonder if, you know, if there needs to be some sort of education regarding the amount of energy even simple web searches are consuming these days. And, you know, if we're talking about reducing our carbon footprint, and I know we've kind of diverged from the whole IoT conversation, but it seems to me that, you know, if we're trying to make folks aware of the amount of energy that you know, that they're consuming on a regular basis, most people don't include web searches in that conversation. So it seems to me that maybe that needs to become a part of the conversation as well. I mean, the kind of the ancillary ways that folks use energy and contribute to a carbon footprint. It's kind of an interesting thought. So I mean, is there a way that IoT can help in that respect then? I mean, yeah. You know,
I think the point that we're trying to make is it's largely around efficiencies, right? Mm-hmm. There are a lot of things that we do, and we mentioned already, we mentioned industry, we mentioned electricity production, we mentioned supply chain, we mentioned light bulbs in people's houses, right?
Right.
All of these things, IoT plays a role in making them all more efficient. How can I do more with less? And how can I reduce the amount of times I have to do something? How can I automate processes so that something can happen a little bit faster? A lot of times IoT is viewed from an ROI perspective by enterprises, by businesses. Mm-hmm. How quickly can I get an ROI on this pilot that I'm going to invest in? So if I buy an IoT solution or an IoT offering and I want to go to market with blank as a service, what's the revenue I'm going to get? But there's a whole different side of a return that enterprises are getting today that are largely focused around the things we're talking about. It's not financial payback, it's increases in efficiencies, it's reduction of waste or scrap, depending on your type of process. So I think IoT is the driver, or maybe the foundation for a lot of the change that's coming that will support this kind of climate, let's say, help that we can bring, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense. And I imagine that, you know, as we shift as a society toward, you know, adjusting to what we've had to adjust to over the course of the year, with people working remotely full time and a lot of schools going online full time, and just kind of, you know, having to kind of shift the way we think about the way we do things. I have a feeling climate change is going to be kind of a larger part of the conversation, for better or for worse, as we start to see the impact of maybe not driving as much, which is a positive, but B, doing so much more online and having that, you know, that increased carbon footprint through the data centers and the cloud services providers. So that's obviously a negative. So I think there's going to be a lot of conversation in the next year, as I said, about how that's going to impact the environment at large. But interesting times ahead. And you know, I say that a lot, but I honestly believe it that we're going to have a lot of interesting conversations next year. But yeah. But for now, Jonathan, thank you so much for having the conversation with me. It's certainly given me something to think about, and I hope it gives other folks something to think about as well. So appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, great. Okay, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so please stay tuned.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community, digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with a Monday edition of the Webinars Preview. As I tell you every single time, we have a great number of webinars on DevOps.com, Container Journal, and Security Boulevard. Lots of really, really great topics and speakers, but I thought I'd let you know about 3 that are coming up immediately so that you can mark your calendar. The first one is called Wishes Do Come True, First Fast Development Secured Delivery. This one is happening tomorrow, Tuesday, December 15th at 11 a.m. Eastern on DevOps.com, and it is sponsored by Sneak. It looks at the ways organizations can speed up the pace of their development necessary to surpass their competition without sacrificing the security of the applications they're delivering. It looks at the Sneak and Circle CI technology, and webinar attendees will learn more about how to build a container delivery CI/CD pipeline using Circle CI, using Sneak to fix risks introduced by open source containers and infrastructure as code, and interpreting Circle CI pipeline insights, including areas of constraint and future improvement. Okay, the next webinar I want to let you know about is also happening Tuesday, December 15th. This one is at 1 p.m. Eastern. It's called How to Build a Healthy On-Call Culture, sponsored by Gremlin, and it's on DevOps.com. You know, the rate of applications being developed and increased customer expectations around high availability and performance have put a lot of pressure on teams developing and supporting SaaS app products. Until outages and other incidents are a thing of the past, however, organizations need to invest in a way of dealing with them that won't lead to employee burnout. This webinar takes a look at how to combine the latest tooling with DevOps practices in the pursuit of a sustainable incident response workflow. I'm sure that is a topic that any organization can benefit from, so please do me a favor and check out that webinar. The last webinar I want to let you know about is called 3 Things to Get Right for Successful DevSecOps. It as well is happening Tuesday, December 15th. This one is at 3 p.m. Eastern on Security Boulevard. And, we all know the benefits of bringing security to DevOps. But despite that, many organizations still think of security and compliance as more of an afterthought in their software development process. So in this webinar, we'll take a look at how to adapt your security testing tools and processes to the developers, not the other way around. How to quit trying to eliminate all vulnerabilities during the development, and how to rethink how service delivery incidents, including security, are handled. And as a bonus, attendees to this webinar will receive a copy of the recently released Gartner report, 12 Things to Get Right for Successful DevSecOps. So please do join us for that webinar, especially if you want to get that Gartner report. All right, that's it for today's edition of the Webinars Preview. I'll be back tomorrow with a fresh new batch. Until then, have a great day. Stay safe.
Hiring great DevOps and cyber talent is a huge challenge for technical teams. Cloud transformation is driving demand higher. You've tried doing it yourself. Job boards, LinkedIn, didn't work. Recruiters are an option, but who do you trust and not waste your time and money? RecruitOps is the new way to source engineering talent. From MediaOps, the people behind DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, Container Journal, and more. We sit right in the middle of the hottest positions in Dev, Sec, and Ops, and the brightest minds in the field. If you're looking for a great position or the talent to fill it, we can help you. Trust us, risk-free.
Thanks, Charlene. Great stuff. Next up, we have Mitchell Ashley, CEO, founder of ASG. Mitchell has some great analysis and commentary video today for us. Let's head now over to Mitch.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Well, I'm very pleased to be joined by Sean Ahmed, who's SVP and GM of Software Delivery Automation Group at CloudBees. Sean, good to be talking with you today.
Likewise. Glad to be here, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I know we have a really great announcement. We want to dig into that and take a look. But before we do, would you just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and also about CloudBees?
Oh, happy to do that. I head up our product marketing and software delivery automation efforts here at CloudBees. I have the distinct honor of being a part of the team that launches new products and positions them in the market and how to make our customers successful with the products. So it's a very exciting time for me personally, as well for us as a company. Now that we're having our virtual launch event here this upcoming week for software delivery management and the first two modules of that platform. So we're very excited about that. For those of you viewers who may not know CloudBees, we are a software delivery company. We are in the business of delivering products that help customers build the software delivery backbones, things like CI/CD tools, automation, orchestration of the build, test, release process, as well as managing the monitoring analytics of the software delivery process to help teams be successful, ensuring that they can continuously safely and rapidly develop and deliver new features to the market. So that's the business we're in, and we're in an exciting time as an industry, and exciting time for us as a company to be in that industry. So.
You know, I know you're a humble person, so I know you won't take this the wrong way, but it's kind of fun playing Tim Cook or Steve Jobs and stand up there and do the introduction of the new product, right? Showing off the work of the whole team. It's very gratifying, and hopefully the team feels that way too.
Oh, absolutely. We've had a lot of people that have worked on this here at CloudBees. We've fundamentally had everything from product marketers to product managers to obviously developers and engineers that have taken, what is a rudimentary idea and turned it from a rudimentary idea for how to improve the lives of software development teams and all software delivery teams in an organization, and turn it into something real. For most of us that have delivered software that are probably listening to this podcast and VCast, I mean, we all know that journey is long sometimes. It is full of pivots, it's full of up and downs, and lots of learnings across the process, and our journey has been nothing different. So when I get to be the person that gets to stand up there, I'm really not representing Sean Ahmed. I am representing, an entire organization and a legion of people that have really made it possible for this rudimentary idea to be real. So I always get a little butterflies at opportunities like this to be able to speak and tell the world about, new products that we're releasing, or some, amazing new feature that we think will impact the world and the teams that we work with and our clients and customers around the world. It's truly an exciting experience, and I'm very humbled by that. So this is a moment for every single person at CloudBees that has worked on this rudimentary idea to making it a reality. So you are right, Mitch.
Well, let's put those butterflies to work and talk about
Let's do it. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, I don't know if there's any setup or kind of context you need to talk about first, or tell us what the announcement is.
Yeah. So happy to talk a little bit about that. So the rudimentary idea, what was the rudimentary idea? The rudimentary idea was, look, every company in the world wants to deliver software and deliver it safe and deliver it fast. And you build your backbone. You build a CI/CD tooling, you build a practice, you build a DevOps practice, you have a DevOps tool chain with a lot of different tools that you use along the process, from an idea of a feature all the way through releasing it into production. And that process generates a tremendous amount of touch points, various teams, ultimately multiple different processes, different tools that people use to actually deliver this software. And each one of those generate a data point, generate some information and an artifact and some data that tells you something about each one of the various steps. But those steps and how this is moving and where things might be stuck, where value might be bottlenecked and so on and so forth, very often gaining insight to those types of data points is very difficult because information's locked down in systems. Different people, different teams, different processes further isolate the information you're looking for. So very often you got engineering managers, developers coming into the work in the morning and they're fishing for information just to get to speed as to where am I? Where is that feature? What process? What worked? What didn't fail? Out of the 10 things I can possibly do today, what are the 3 that will have the greatest impact? And our rudimentary idea was, what if you could take all the data points from that entire DevOps tool chain and you could draw correlated insights from that would inform and drive your decision making, that would inform and drive your conversations with teams, that would inform and drive your discussions with stakeholders and even business stakeholders across the group about where software delivery efforts are and how we did against the efforts that we had. And we thought a lot about that, and we said to do that, you would need a fundamentally sound platform that you would bring all the data into. You would have to design a layer, a common meta model. You'd have to define, some data store, a system of record that you could classify information by. And you wouldn't want to do all of that manually. You would want to do it automatically. And that was the fundamental background for our software delivery management platform. It is what we're releasing, and we're releasing 2 modules on top of that platform. The platform does solve that exact problem that I just spoke of. It introduces a system of record, a database, a common data model where you can pull data from multiple different data points and DevOps tool chains like Jira, GitHub, your CI/CD system, your source control system, your ticketing system, from build jobs, from test jobs, and you pull all this data through connectors into this database, and it normalizes it for you. It generates the insights and then feeds that into 2 modules that we're releasing. One is engineering efficiency, and the other is feature management. And what we're releasing is these 2 first modules on top of that platform, and they have one goal in mind. Engineering efficiency is all there to help understand where teams are focusing. It's there to help who's working on what investment areas are we spending our time in. Crucially important information to correlate across these systems to ensure that what you had planned is what you're working on. What you need to do next week can be, or the next sprint can be designed against where the work is sitting, against the activity your teams are performing on, against the work that you have. Maybe you got scope creep and you want to know which epics are being worked on and determine when and how they can be released. Drawing all that insights from these various different systems are critical to both analyze how did we do against plan and also how are we going to do in the future. That sort of things allows us to have business discussion with holders. And the second module is feature management.
So I have a question for you before we go to this.
Oh yeah, sure. Let's go into that. Yeah, let's talk more about engineering efficiency.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about, I know engineering managers, software leaders want to know what's happening inside the process, right? What were their options before releasing this platform and the Cloudbees engineering efficiency module?
That's a great question. And I'll actually tell you a story to answer that question about myself. Prior to coming to Cloudbees, I spent a lot of time in a software development design studio. And a lot of my times in the mornings were just spent in understanding, sort of where our teams were at, where did we land, how's it going, where may things be stuck. All I wanted to do as an engineering manager there, or engineering management, was to help my teams perform better and unblock things that are blocked and help determine what work we need to work on, prioritization, communicate it with customers, communicate with stakeholders. So what would I do? I'm telling you, I would get into the office 2-3 hours sometimes before other teams, and I'd be sitting looking at ticketing systems. I'd be jumping into Jira. I'd look at all our pull requests, separately going into GitHub, looking at the PRs there, trying to figure out which ones are pending review, which ones are not, which ones have been sitting idle, which ones have not, to help the teams then draw the lines between which ones are the important ones and which ones are associated with this sprint and this release for this feature. And I'd be going from there, looking at our build jobs to see, have they been built? Are they testing okay? And so on and so forth. And many times my biggest desire would be to just go, okay, I wish there was a way for me to, even if it's not fully finished, at least put it out there and test it. Not just, because if it passed its test, I want to put it, though we don't have all the features and every bells and whistle in the feature that we've created and we wanted, I just want to progressively deliver it. Maybe I deliver it to a small group of people. Maybe I just give it to 10% of my populace for using the applications. Maybe get some feedback, then go reiterate and do that rapidly. I would spend hours on hours collecting that data, either manually from stand-ups, going through spreadsheets, creating systems for it. And I eventually just gave up.
I was waiting for the spreadsheet word to come up. Sometimes
yeah, exactly.
Finance, right? That's all you're doing is spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the second module too, because I'm going to have time to kind of put them both in context then.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So feature management is a really great way of thinking about progressive delivery. I touched on that in my previous answer. Progressively delivering software to me was and is all about this risk that you take away from a software release by decoupling the features and putting some controls around them and the actual deployment itself. So many times you're building software and you're going, I'd love to get this tested. I would like to get it out to my end users. I want to see it in the, so to speak, real world and ascertain, is it working as designed? Is what are people using? What are they loving about it? What are they not? But we don't often release that way because of fear of the fact that it might break something. It's unfinished. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles and so on and so forth. And what feature management is doing is it's allowing me to use the ability of feature flagging, powerful capabilities we've had for a long time through the acquisition of Rollout, and combined with feature management allows me to group these features together and release them as the larger features out into the production environment at will, right? And by doing so, I have the ability to release it and test it, put powerful conditions around it, things like who's going to receive it, how many of the populace should receive it, split it up. I can experiment with that big feature, test it out, see how it works, take the feedback, and if, God forbid, something breaks, just shut the thing out without having to worry about a rollback.
And this
I can do that from my phone.
Not just at the upfront stage. This is once you're building software, as you're progressing. Well, let's say if I combine these 5 instead of the other 4 I was planning on, what's that going to look like? How's that going to work? Is that going to support the kind of functionality, capability we need to deliver in market or internally?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we've got so many great ideas that we're continuing to already we're building on for the next release after the one that we're releasing this week. More capabilities on feature management to come together, because it's all about the life cycle management of your software. And the life cycle management of your software comes down to the features you're building, the teams that are working on them, how they're being released, who they're being used by, the feedback you can gain early on in the process. And that is super, super exciting for us as we work our way through that. We're going to have a lot of really, really fun capabilities for powerful empowerment of the software delivery teams coming up above and beyond even what we're releasing here on the 10th. So it's exciting time. So you put these two things together, and it combines everything from the build test process and the efficiency with which we're building things all the way through production and controlling it. And these two modules itself, I think, are the two first most powerful modules that our customers have been asking us to build on the software delivery management platform. So that's the release.
I'd love to ask you, especially about this. Sometimes people start on the left and work right, at the beginning of the software process. But why these two modules first? And I suspect, I'm guessing, maybe this is sort of a build-out strategy from this, or a start at the core, right? And of getting software into test out the door, what it's going to be, and then build out with other modules. Is that a lucky guess? How am I doing?
You're doing pretty good. I think we the way that we saw it, and why, to answer your question, why these two modules first versus any number of modules and many that are being built and many capabilities, why these ones? Well, a lot of that comes from the feedback of our early customers and their foray into the software delivery management platform itself, and their feedback as to what they found the most prescient need at this time that they were looking at. And honestly, some of that also changed with COVID-19 and teams working increasingly more remote. It led to a need for far more insights to drive more informed discussions, and for teams that are working remote, to drive discussions that are based on data, to drive discussions that are based on real information as opposed to guesswork, or, like I said, spreadsheets and collection of information from multiple places. So we saw the need both from a market perspective, that's outside in, and also inside out from the customers that we're working on. So that's how we landed at the decision of engineering efficiency first and focusing on the metrics and analysis, the focus, cycle time, and pull requests and those types of metrics, because those were critical to have. Everybody was collecting or needed some way of better collecting those. Being able to do that automatically, aggregate it, ingest it within minutes, and start getting those correlated insight right out of the box was very, very value enhancing for these teams and something they do every single day. So we decided, let's begin with that on the platform that we've built. Feature management was also a critical thing with regards to how people are releasing the software and controlling it in the market. So many companies told us throughout this entire process we were working with that removing risk away from the releases is critically important to them, and ensuring that the teams have a peace of mind when they're releasing software, that there is a way back from something breaking that is safe and sound for them and doesn't necessarily just break your entire weekend and hours on work, rollbacking things. And we felt like we have some pieces and componentry all there that we already owned in terms of technology. And we felt we'd take that and let's build on that and make it even more powerful. So that's how we landed at those two things. And we know that there's more yet to be built on this platform. But I'll leave you with this final thought, Mitch, which was a lot of our times that these teams, development teams and product managers at CloudBees have worked on is building the iceberg. And these modules are very much tip of the iceberg. It cannot be, you cannot say enough how hard it is to build a platform like this that powers rapid development of new insights, rapid new capabilities that we can deliver on top of this platform. It really took us time and effort and spending good time building a platform that we think will grow with our customers, will grow for us, and will provide capabilities to rapidly release software. So there's definitely a tip of the iceberg here, and the iceberg is definitely the software delivery management platform, the tip being these two modules.
That's the emphasis on the platform. I'm curious, is this more targeted at existing customers who kind of add this to what they're already doing with CloudBees, or is this something very approachable by a new customer that's coming to you and say, I'm really interested, I want to get a handle on these things?
Oh, that's a great question. You know what? It's both. It's both. We are targeting these types of insights, these two modules, at both existing customers as well as brand new. You may not have any other relationship with CloudBees at all. You may not have a relationship on the CI/CD automation tooling. You may not have a relationship with the release orchestration tooling, but chances are pretty high that you have many other DevOps tools. Also, you probably have some source code control system. You probably have some ticketing system to manage your work. And so there's a tremendous amount of insights you can take just right out of that. So all of the connectors that we've built into the platform allows you to pick and choose the data points that you want to integrate into this data model and start driving insights. So we are hoping this is, and believe this is a platform and modules for all, not just CloudBees customers.
Excellent. Good deal. So folks can find out more by reaching out at cloudbees.com, correct?
That's
or is there a
right.
better way?
You can go and straight sign up and to cloudbees.com and start using the products now. Very simple. You go to our webpage. On the right, it says log in or sign up. Click up on the sign up, pick the product you want to test out, and it'll take you right to the platform homepage, which is where you'll find both engineering efficiency and feature management modules. I mean, simply launch it from there, test and try it out.
Excellent. I don't know if you could hear, I think my dog Eddie barked in the background when you said you can go to the site and sign up. So he's excited. Well, good. We have a couple of demos that you all have provided. So we'll add those to the end of this. So anybody wants to stick around and take a look at the demos. I know they're reasonably short, so you can get a really good idea of the capabilities of both the CloudBees engineering efficiency and the CloudBees feature management modules. Well, it's been great talking with you. Congratulations on the announcement. Congratulations to the full CloudBees team. This is a team sport. Software is a team sport, right?
Oh, it is, totally.
Tons of people to thank, and I appreciate you joining us to share a little bit about your announcement.
Thanks for having me, Mitch. And again, for all the people at CloudBees that are listening right now to this podcast, thank you to you all. And Mitch, thank you to you for having us on. And I look forward to continued success and onwards we go in the world of software delivery.
You bet. Excited to hear what's next. All right, Sean, we'll talk to you again soon. Take care.
You got it, Mitch. Thanks. Bye.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
It's going to wrap up today's show. We hope you enjoyed today's TechStrong TV. Before I go, I wanted to mention one thing. News broke on Friday that the folks over at TechTarget had purchased BrightTalk for about $150 million. I was happy to see it on several fronts. Number one, it was a very healthy multiple of revenue for BrightTalk. So as the owner here at MediaOps, it did my heart strong. But number two, I think it's validation of what we've been doing here at TechStrong TV, what I've been doing at MediaOps with Digital Anarchist and our webinar programs and everything else. I think the world's moving away from just reading articles as their sole source of information, especially around technology. People want to see more multimedia. They want to see more video. They want to see hear more audio. They want to be more immersive in their learning and education and keeping up to date. So I think TechTarget realized that though they're a large company in public, they really didn't have a strong presence in anything beyond print. And that's why we do what we do here. We try to really push the envelope on new technologies. Now, would I like to see less of our MediaOps, DevOps.com, Security Boulevard webinars on BrightTalk? Yes, I would. They're really not supposed to be on there, but it's hard to police that all the time, it seems. But we will continue to try, because I think our brand of webinars and videos are uniquely ours, and we try really hard. I think we have something that these other folks don't have, and that's you. We understand our community. We understand our audience in digital transformation, DevOps, cyber, cloud native. We don't try to be everything to everyone. But nevertheless, it shows this change coming in the tech media and tech learning marketplace, and I'd like to think in some small way we're part of it. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with even more great information, interviews, and content. But until then, man, hey, stay safe, stay well, stay strong, tech strong. This is Alan Schimmel. We're out.